Welcome to the People's Guild with me, Wascal, and my co-host, B Jangles.
We're a couple of Splinterlanders that love exploring all things Pretoria with a wide variety of guests from all across the community and Splinterlands universe.
Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Okay, welcome back to the People's Guild. Another week, another episode, and another wonderful guest. This week we have, and I've been thinking about how to describe him, is a man of many talents. We can say farmer, real life, and the metaverse coming up, collector and entrepreneur, Leveluplife from TeamPH. Welcome to the show.
What's going on, man? Good to be here. So I know that we had I got a message from you right before we were going to start here. B Jangles isn't feeling well, right?
Yeah.
So what we were thinking about rescheduling. I think it wouldn't be the same without both of you guys. It just feels like it's that, I don't know. It kind of flows with the two of you guys. So what we thought, we would just get on anyways, since it was close to the time slot anyways, and we would just kind of see where it goes and maybe just talk,
Yeah, for sure, man. Honestly, since we first hooked up with Damien Wolf, then Mango Mayhem, and definitely when I mentioned it with Mango Mayhem as well, like when I first heard about what you guys are doing, it definitely sparked something. So it's just like led us down this path, and ever since we started kind of chatting and trying to arrange it, I've been really looking forward to it. And I think honestly, I feel I could just speak to you about so many things and we could go on for hours. So yeah, let's see how this goes. So just a little bit of a background with you. Just I know you've been in the Philippines for 8 years now, and why did you choose Philippines? What drew you to the Philippines?
Yeah, pretty simple story actually. I think what was happening was, I had a pretty typical life in the US, probably going through what, a lot of dudes in the US are going through, in their late 20s or something like that. And just, I was actually engaged to a girl, American girl, back in the US. And, what it wasn't, I was struggling with the relationship aspect of things, and I was in a relationship, not the best relationship, but I did get engaged. And I guess in the back of my mind, I was thinking that I could be engaged for a while, like see how it goes. And I guess what she thought was engagement meant it's you start planning the wedding. You know what I mean? Like engagement means you got to plan a wedding, right? But you don't do that first. So you get engaged and then you start planning a wedding. And so I guess after we were engaged for like a month, she was like, "So when are we going to start planning the wedding?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, you know what I mean? We're only 30 days. I thought I thought we get to do the engagement thing for a while, And so I kind of just had this really hard thought, man, do I really want to do this? The engagement felt like not so big of a deal, but then the marriage was like, wait a minute now, man, this is a commitment. You know what I mean? And I remember just sitting in my car one day, man, just thinking like, no, it ain't the one, man. It ain't the one. And so I pretty much just called off the wedding. And obviously the minute I was like, didn't want to plan the wedding, it was pretty much over after that, And so I called off the wedding, and then I just started thinking, I guess I wasn't really expecting to be single, but I just was like, man, I'm single. You know what I mean? I wasn't really expecting that. I was in a serious relationship for a while, a couple of years. And so I was just like, what am I going to do now? I was like, you know what? I'm going to travel. You know what I mean? Like, let me get out of the country. I had never left the country before, and I had a passport, and I was like, I got to travel before I get in another serious relationship, and that's how it started, man. I literally was on the internet, you know what I mean? Trying to meet, going on some dating websites from other countries, trying to meet some girls. And then I just ended up I didn't even think about it. It happened that I ended up on a Filipino website. and I started meeting Filipino girls, and their English was good, and I could communicate, and we were talking, and I thought, I'm gonna go to Philippines. And now that's pretty much it, man. That's how it started. I went to the Philippines to meet a girl. That's not who I'm married to now, but that girl didn't work out. But I mean, I originally went to meet a girl and went to the Philippines and kind of just fell in love with the Philippines. And then I decided I was going to move here, and I made a 4-year plan that I was leaving in 4 years. I put a date on it, set a goal, told everyone I know, told my family, guys, I'm leaving in 4 years,
Well,
and pretty much left on the date.
wow.
Four
Nice,
years
man.
later, man, I was like, my family threw a going away party for me in the US, and I got on an airplane and I left, man, and
Wow.
never looked back.
But yeah, that's the power of making the goal, right? Like you just have that drive to kind of make sure it happens. Yeah, I remember when I made that decision to kind of travel as well, and I remember telling my friend and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be traveling around Southeast Asia in about a year," and he was like, "You're not going to do that." And it was like, as soon as he said that, it was like, I'm going to be doing that.
So
So
where are you now?
Taiwan,
Oh, you're in Taiwan.
Taiwan, yeah. So,
Interesting.
but yeah, I just spent a good 6 months traveling around, Thailand, Cambodia,
Mm.
Vietnam, Laos at that time, and then went to Australia. Why did you specifically say 4 years?
I just I think money was a big player in it, and so I just kind of knew what I could do in 4 years. I knew my positioning and stuff, and so I just 4 years felt right.
Hmm.
you know I mean, maybe you felt this too, but it's never feels like right. You're always playing that game where, but maybe I'll wait one more year, and or maybe I'll go early. It just, I think you just got to put a date on it, because it never feels right to make a move like that. You know what I mean? Never feels like a right time. You never feel totally prepared, but um once I put it out there, you know it kind of was set in stone for me.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like when you think about having kids, it's like people saying, "Why don't you have a kid? Why don't you have a kid?" And you're just like, it's just not the right time. But it just kind of rings a bell. It's like it never really is the right time to have a kid, right?
No,
You just
no,
gotta like whatever happens, you just gotta just roll with the punches. So,
for
like
sure.
when you arrived in the Philippines, because when I first arrived in Taiwan, I just felt very free and uplifted, and I think maybe it was like the different smells, the weather, just being able to just jump on I bought a motorbike when I first arrived as well, and just like that freedom, just running up into the mountains, like where I was in Taipei. It's really close to the mountains. You just got so much beautiful riding you can do. I bought a bicycle as well, so it's just kind of felt very free, and probably the food as well. Just everything was just so different. So when I first arrived, it was just like felt I was just like on a vacation for a long, long time. Even though I did have work, but it felt very uplifting. Like, what was it about the Philippines that kind of first like tickled your fancy, so to speak?
I think, I originally went for to meet a girl, right?
Mm.
And I'm attracted to the Filipino girls. I think that, the Philippines has beautiful women, right? So I mean, naturally that's what drew me, right? Um, but the more I went, I got really intrigued by, you know, just everything else that was going on there. The cultural differences, just I was really intrigued, and I kind of wanted to know more. You know what I mean? I wanted to kind of dig in a little bit more. And I don't know. I think this is sort of a common thing when you travel. Is they call it like the vanilla experience. You could have a tourist experience in every country, but I kind of wanted to like, I want to go sit with some locals. You know what I mean? Just, you know what I mean? Like, I want to learn, I want to see like what's going on here. Maybe I'll learn something, new and something like that. And so that it's weird because that never ended, man. I've been here like 9 years and I'm still doing that. You know what I mean? I'm still like having new experiences. It's crazy. Maybe that's, you know, um, I haven't talked to a lot of dudes that have, moved to another country and stuff. So maybe that's a similar experience, like you never really feel like you're not a foreigner. You know what I mean? I think, and even the locals, they don't know how long, you meet new people. They don't know how long you've been there. You look like a tourist potentially to everybody. So you kind of get treated like that, even though you've been living here a long time. Um, so man, it's an adventure.
Mm. Well, that's great that
There's an
after eight
adventure.
years that you still feel that it's an adventure.
I kind of like being out of my comfort zone. I like to feel a little bit uncomfortable. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If I begin to feel comfortable in life, I don't like it. I feel like
Mm.
I need to just shake it up or something. I need to do something different.
Is that why you moved to that? It's called is it Barclay? Barangay, sorry. You moved to
Yeah,
that village for 3 months or something, right? Is that
yeah,
was that also just a
I moved to a Bronx. Yeah, yeah, there was an adventure aspect to it. I had an idea. That's my wife's where my wife was born and raised, and so my father-in-law is there, and she's got two brothers, and they were there. Well, one of the brothers was there, and I kind of had an idea of what I was getting into. You know what I mean? If I went there, and so I just went for it. And my wife's father, my father-in-law is a coconut farmer. you know
mm,
and I have this weird thing. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I didn't always get to flex it in the US because the US kind of pushes you into a job, and I mean, stuff like this. Starting a business and stuff can be, I don't know, it just doesn't really make sense for me in the US, for different reasons. But I think when I came to the Philippines, it kind of, the barrier of entry and stuff, or what crossing that line into business. I mean, almost every like there's tons of yeah, there's trike drivers, little motorcycle guy. I mean, everybody's a business owner here. It's like the flipped opposite. Everybody's an entrepreneur here, even the ones that don't realize it. They're like little entrepreneurs, doing little entrepreneurial stuff. And so I was just able to flex that. And I also wanted to experience the culture through business. I thought I knew that I needed to come here and make pesos, right? I knew I was going to try to make a peso income. I didn't know what that was going to look like. I mean, I wasn't coming here to get a job, but I knew I was going to need to make pesos, right? I don't have a retirement. I don't have Social Security. Don't have a 401k. I've got nothing really to fall back on. I kind of burned my bridge a little bit. So I knew eventually I'd have to make it work. And I knew that was going to be an experience, to experience the Philippines and the Filipino culture through business.
So
You know what I
what
mean?
did you do when you say you like wanted to make pesos when you first arrived? What did you do when you first arrived, like for work?
So when I first arrived, I did have a little, I brought a GoPro. I did have a little bit of an idea that maybe I could just, I could make videos, right? So I did that for a little while, but really didn't see a really big way to monetize it, and was kind of interested in making money. And then I thought, what I did when I moved to the barangay was so actually the first thing that really happened to me was I was sitting at a coffee shop called Bo's Coffee here. It's like the Starbucks of the Philippines a little bit. And I was sitting at this coffee shop, and my wife's aunt walked in, and she's they a little bit of Taglish, right? You could make out a few words, but it's in Tagalog, and so, but I could kind of get a feeling of what was being said. And her uncle was in the hospital, something medical emergency, something like this, and they had a coconut farm. Her aunt had a coconut farm, and she wanted to do what's called an aprenda, right? This was my first real making some pesos, right? And so, my wife looked at me at some point in the conversation and said, we were sitting at a coffee shop. Her aunt walked in, or her aunt texted her something, said, we're here. And her aunt came in and talk. And my wife looked at me and she says, she wants to borrow money. I'm like, here we go. Borrowing money. Right. Right. Like I'm into this situation now. Right. But she said she wants to put up the coconut farm as collateral. And I was like, all right, this is interesting. Tell me how this works. What's the deal, right? I'm down. And it was like 40,000 pesos, which was like, it's like $800 or something like that loan. And I was like, all right, that's within my budget. That's worth, taking a shot. You know what I mean? Even if it fails. And the deal is they call it an apprenda, and in English it's like pawn. So you're gonna pawn the coconut farm to me. So the coconut farm becomes the collateral. Then you put up a loan, and the interest payments are the coconuts, right? So the way that the coconuts are, it's an amazing. I mean, coconut trees, man, are amazing, right? Because the way that it works is you harvest a coconut every 6 months. So a coconut that gets harvested is 6 months old, but you're harvesting every 3 months. So basically, every 3 months, a guy climbs the tree. He pulls out the older ones, leaves the younger ones. The younger ones are 3 months old. The older ones are 6 months old. So 3 months later, the 3-month-old one becomes 6 months. And now you have new 3-month ones. And it's like a weed, man. There's no care, no maintenance. It literally just filled with coconuts, every 3 months. And it's amazing. It's like money doesn't grow on trees, man. I'm telling you, dude, coconut tree is pretty damn close to money growing on trees. And so basically what happens is, they pawn the farm, they put it up as collateral, they take a loan, and then basically you get the harvest until they pay you back. I was like, I'm down. So first harvest comes and I filmed it with my GoPro and I went up there and we harvested it, and I'm going to do the calculation, right? Okay, I lent 40. What am I going to make on it? Right. And then there's a lot of little rules, but I don't, I try to sit back and learn. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to make new rules. I'm just adjusting by the rules that they have. And so the return was amazing. I made like, I don't know, 4,000 pesos or something like that. You know what I mean? Which is like, what is that, 10% or something? I made like 10% in 3 months, right? If you take that over a year, it's like, what am I gonna make? 40%? I'm gonna make 40% of my money. I'm like, so then I looked at my wife, I looked at my father-in-law, and I said, hey, we're doing coconut farm. We're going in on this, man. This is just too good, And I was like, man, it doesn't really make sense to me. This return on investment is killer. Maybe it's too good to be true. But I sat my father-in-law down, my brother-in-law in the house and the barangay, and I said, we are going to farm coconuts. Are you guys ready to scale this? Because we're going in. And they looked at me and they were like, sure. And that was it, man. And I put the word out in the whole barangay. We're doing loans. We're loaning money for farm. Bring your deals. And the next day we had like 4 people show up at the house. We're interested. We want to borrow money. And we do this thing called surveying. So you do the thing called surveying. So what you do is, a survey is before you do a pawn, before you do a deal, you survey the farm. So you go and walk into the jungle and you walk the boundary of the farm because, this is the jungle, the boundaries are coconut tree. As a matter of fact, it's interesting what they've done is, it looks like older generations, like the older generations when they own this land, the way that they do it is they plant 2 coconut trees next to each other. And it's really weird because they grow in a V shape. Okay. And they'll do this on the boundary. And so what happens is sometimes you can look down this row of trees because they're all scattered. They're not like in order or nothing like that. There's just coconut trees everywhere. But when you get on a boundary, sometimes you'll actually can look right through a bunch of trees and they grow out like this because they put them right next to each other. And that's usually where you could tell a boundary is. And so what you do is you walk the boundary and you look up at the trees and then I'll look at my father-in-law and I'll just be like, and he'll be like, and I'll be like, okay, deal, go back, change the money. And then you change the money in front of the barangay captain, right? So there's no you don't really do formal paperwork. You kind of do like the barangay has like a treasure, you know what I mean? And you give him 200 pesos and he'll write it up for you. And then what
Wow.
you do is you're standing in front of they have a barangay captain. The barangay captain is it's an elected official, and he's the captain and he solves problems. You know, if there's a problem, he'll get involved and he'll solve it and whatnot. And he's usually it's the richest, one of the richer people of the barangay, and he gets voted in and everything. And anyways, you'd go in front of him and you'd one of the things I did to protect myself is I'd transact in front of the barangay captain. So you'd actually show the money like this. The barangay captain would be watching, and then the other guy would take the money, and now you can't dispute it. It's a barangay captain. You know
Did
what I mean?
did you not
He
have your
saw.
GoPro on top of your head?
I never filmed that. No, I never felt comfortable enough to film stuff like that. But I mean, sometimes you do these deals with guys and they couldn't sign their own. Like one time I did a deal with a guy, he couldn't sign his own name, grown man, give him a pen, couldn't sign his name. And I remember they took a pen, a regular ballpoint pen, and they penned his finger and they made him push his thumb on the paper. And I was just thinking, what am I doing, man? You know what I mean? Like, how did I end up here, man? What am I doing? But yeah,
So
that's it. That was,
wow.
yeah.
But with I read as well, like with the coconut tree, it takes like 5 years to grow. Is that right?
Yeah, it takes about 5 years. If you plant a brand new coconut tree, it'll take about 5 years to produce coconuts. Yeah. But but there's coconuts. I mean, these farms, they're at every age. You know, I mean, I think there's some that are 80 years old or something like that. You know,
Mm.
some of these coconut trees are so tall too, man. They're just crazy tall, and they're just still spitting out coconuts, you know. And so, and they're at every age level on the farm, you know. A
And
lot of times what happens is a coconut just falls down, you know, randomly through the harvesting and everything. One just plants roots, they kind of leave it alone, and it just, you know, you kind of see some random ones just starting, you
mm.
know, to
So the farm that you bought, it already had coconut trees ready to go.
yes, this is considered coconut land, so you're buying it as coconut land. um and that journey took me interesting places, you know. I did a bunch of farms, we bought some. You know, sometimes I'd go and look at a farm, and the guy, I remember I went and looked at a farm. Well, I remember one time I was walking through the barangay and a guy said to me, he goes, you want to buy my house? And I was like, you know what? I'm really not into houses. But if you got coconut farm, and he goes, I got a coconut farm. And I was like, how much? And he goes like 36,000 or something. It was like 36,000 pesos, which is like $700, you know? And I'm like, let's go tomorrow and look at it, you know? And now I'm in the jungle, I'm hiking to some farm, look at the farm, and I'm like, all right, and then I'm buying it. So I bought farms too. Some of them were just if they were priced right, or sometimes the guy didn't really want to do a pawn, he just wanted to sell it for whatever reason. And so I bought some too, you know. So we own a lot of farms. We have a lot of pawns, and so we have a little bit of both. And then I became what's called a copra buyer. So I actually bought copra. Copra is the product that you're making with the coconuts. It's the product that you're making with the coconuts is called copra. I consider it to be the most crappiest. If you could take a coconut and make the most crappiest product you could possibly make, the most low grade, crappiest, you know, low end product with the coconut, it's copra, and that's what they make it with. You know what I mean? And so, I didn't fight that. You know, I just rolled with it. You know, and so I became what's called a copra buyer. And so in the barangay, there's a lot of middlemen. You know what I mean? There's always middlemen, you know. So you got a small farmer, and then there's a middleman and then another middleman, and then and then finally it ends up in China or something like that. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And so a copra buyer is sort of like, you know, you cut out a couple middlemen. You know what I mean? And so I became essentially a middleman, where a small farmer with like 1 hectare who goes and does a harvest, he just wants to say, he doesn't, you know, he doesn't have the quantity to go sell it to China, right? So he'll basically carry it out of the barangay, out of the jungle, and they call that straight. They call that selling it straight, because when you sell it directly out of the jungle, there's wet and dry. There's still a moisture level in the coconut. And so a lot of the way you sell it is kind of like moisture levels. And so when it's directly out of the jungle, it means it's the most wet as it is. It's called selling it straight. And so I became a buyer where then I dry it out to another level. So let's say in the jungle they take 40% of the moisture out, and then they hike it out of the jungle, right? Because they're not bringing coconuts out, right? They do a basic processing in the jungle because it saves on the carrying it out and stuff costs money. So they take out about 40% of the moisture in the jungle, and then what they'll generally do is they'll sell it straight, and then there's another guy who takes out maybe another 20% of the moisture, and then that will be sold to the big city, and then the big city will have a bigger buyer, and then that bigger buyer will kind of like sell it they'll like put it on a ship and sell it to China or something like that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so I kind of became a copra buyer. So on a barangay level, I would have a price, and I would say, today I'm buying copra at, this much per kilo. And then if people wanted, they could sell it to me. Or there was probably about 3 buyers in the barangay. The barangay captain was a buyer, right? And so I was a buyer, and then there was another buyer. And so when a small farmer bring his 5 sacks of copra out of the jungle, he had like 3 different people to choose from.
How difficult is it, like, as a foreigner going to like the Philippines and starting the business like that you've been doing?
I obviously, I don't have knowledge of all these different places. You've probably been to more places than I have been, but I'm gonna guess that the Philippines is probably one of the easiest. And I think the reason for that is just because, and I think this is also why I'll probably never leave the Philippines, and probably why I stayed here, and probably the biggest reason why I'm here. And you hear this if you listen to Filipino bloggers, you'll hear one thing over and over and over again, and that is the friendliest people. Philippines is on just another level. The friendliness here goes so far that it's almost like, I remember I took my family to Singapore, right? And I had been living here a couple years already, and my family went to Singapore. And I remember I arrived at Singapore, and when I got up to like the check-in, the immigration to get stamped into the country with my family, I just remember having this reality check. I was like, oh my God, I'm not in the Philippines anymore, right? I'm in now like a Western, first world country where people like hate their jobs. Because I happen to get a guy that in my opinion, I think he was just hated his job. Right. And I hadn't experienced that yet. Like, I've never experienced a Filipino hating their job. Right. Where like, you order a coffee and some guy's like, here's your damn coffee. You know what I mean? Never going to happen. And now for the first time, like, I'm like, oh my God, I've been in the Philippines for like 4 years. And now I'm like, oh my God, wait, I got to put on my first world face again. You know what I mean? Like, I forgot what it's like to deal with people that are pissed off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder what that is though. Like, and you probably be able to explain why. But like, and I'm just thinking as well, back in England, if say for example, a Filipino went to England and just did what you did, just go into like a small village, start their own farm, it wouldn't go down too well, and and not in terms of like, I'm not too sure what would happen, but the local people would just feel, hey, who's this coming into our neck of the woods and making money, and it's just like, it's very territorial. So like, and in Taiwan, it's kind of similar to what you said as well. I feel over here in Taiwan, foreigners are able to start their own businesses a lot easier possibly than they would back home. But you can't, you have to have a Taiwanese business partner. You can't just do it on your own, to be honest. So maybe not as easy. But yeah, I wonder what it is that just
I could take a stab at it. I think and I think this, this even draws back into Splinterlands. You know what I mean? This is a big topic for Splinterlands, because something that I really want to do for Splinterlands is kind of be a bridge. I think that I think that this whole Web3 movement and everything, and it's really interesting because you have the ability to unleash these different cultures, that are going to, kind of mesh together. And I think it's very interesting when I see it from this Filipino perspective on how the Filipinos are interacting in just a game Splinterlands. I mean, I'm sure it's all different communities in all different types of projects in the crypto space, but I'm specifically watching it unfold in the Splinterlands community. And I think there's a lot to it, man. And I think that it's an very, very important. I think it's definitely worth the energy to put on it. I would say I think that there is definitely a cultural, we could unpack this topic alone. We could probably talk about a long time, but I guess I'll just hone in on one point. The first point that came to my mind was, and we could figure out why we can unpack this even, but they still have a community aspect to their culture. Community is still an important piece of everything. There was a few problems that happened in that barangay, and even me, I felt this. Like, okay, like I think in my wife's barangay, I asked one of the treasurers once, like because of voting and stuff like this, they had like 800 houses. Okay, so to give you an idea, the barangay is about 800 homes, right? And then, however many people live in each house, but about 800 houses. I mean, I'm part of this community. You know what I mean? Like I feel it. I'm waking up, I'm interacting with people, like for example, there's no running water and you would wait, they'd have these different like water stations and sometimes you'd have to wait in line for a second because someone's filling up their bucket. And, there's a real sense of community. You're interacting with these people. There's a lady selling soap and basic necessities. And, you'd buy them a lot of people are buying these by the day. Like they call them sachets, right? So a sachet of shampoo or a sachet of toothpaste. So sometimes you're buying, enough shampoo to last you 3 days. You're buying shampoo every 3 days, and you're interacting with a little market that's there. And the community is so important. You know what I mean? There's an old philosophy, and it's interesting because my daughter goes to school now. I've got a 13-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they're both in school. And my daughter got her books, and one of her books the book's title is called Bayanihan, right? And Bayanihan, it's a word that really it means community, right? And my daughter has a whole subject, a book dedicated to that topic, right? And there's an old, if you try to Google Bayanihan, what you're going to find is you'll find a lot of these pictures of it's really this old. It actually I might still take place today, but the idea is that people used to they still live in them today, but you would see these they're like bamboo homes. They call them kubos, right? And they're bamboo homes, and you can actually see underneath. You know what I mean? They're usually on like bamboo, and then it's all made of bamboo, and they have nipa, like they're like palm roofing shingles made out of palm tree leaves and stuff like this and whatnot. And what they used to have this thing that's called a bayanihan, and hopefully I'm doing this justice, but the basic idea is that the owner of the house, maybe they sold their land or whatever, they'd want to move their house, right? And maybe it's because they sold the land, but they're taking their house off the land because the land got sold or whatever. And they would have this bayanihan. And basically what happened is all the men from the barangay would go to that house, and the owner of the house would cook food for everybody. And then in return, that was like the thank you. And in return, all the men would lift the house up and move it. Right. And you could see this if you Google it, you'll see there's a lot of these pictures, and there's even recent vloggers who have filmed this. You know what I mean? Like with their GoPro, oh, look, and you'll see like a bunch of guys walking down the street carrying a house or a roof or whatever. Then maybe they'll take it apart in 2 pieces or something if it's big.
this is community, man. Like, can you imagine being like, I don't, and the Western cultures is more of like the optimist. I don't need anybody. I could do it on my own, right? I mean, if your car gets a flat tire, you just call 1-800 tow truck, right? You don't need your neighbor to come help you change the tire. You know what I mean? Even if you're a woman, and it's raining outside, you just stay in your car and some man in a truck's going to come. You just call AAA or whatever, right?
Mm.
That's not how it is in the Philippines. I'll give you a quick story real quick. I was driving once. I was driving to the barangay and I was on the road and there was a guy and he kind of waved me down and I stopped and his tire he had driven off the road and the road kind of had a drop off. And so his back tire had fallen down off the road, right? And I remember getting out and he had like a rope and we tied the rope to my truck and I tried to pull it and the rope broke. You know what I mean? I was like, I don't know, man. I can't really help you. You know what I mean? Like I kind of wanted to go. I couldn't really help him and I was going to go on my way. And right before I left, man, it's like 5 men came up from the barangay. You know what I mean? They got up, they walked up the road. The barangay was down a little bit and I see these 5 heads pop up and it's just these men, and they lifted the truck up. You know what I mean? He drove off. You know what I mean? And that's the type of stuff. You know what I mean? So I guess to go back to your original question, why is it like that? And I would say, hopefully they don't lose that. Hopefully they don't become westernized. I don't know what the future holds, but as of right now, they still have community. Community is still an important aspect. And so now bring that into a Web3 game, bring that into a Splinterlands or something like this. And this is a lot of times why I think you don't see a lot of Filipinos necessarily interacting with the broader community. And that's because I think there's a cultural divide. There's this, they don't understand us. You understand what I'm saying? They don't really understand. And I don't want to go in there and teach people. And that's the Filipino culture is they're not the teachers. They're not going to go in there and be like, let me teach these guys a different way. They're just more likely to just go start a side community where they talk amongst themselves and where they have an understanding with each other. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I think that's one of the divides that you see. And I think the Filipino culture can teach. I think there's a lot that everybody can learn, especially Western mentality can learn from the Filipino culture. And that's kind of one of the things that I'm looking to do. That's one of my objectives, is to kind of be that bridge and instead of having this divided community, Filipinos over there and other people over there, maybe there's some kind of a
I feel it sounds beautiful, man, the way you're describing it, right? But yeah, I wonder if it's also like you say, I hope they don't become westernized, but I think isn't that like maybe it's partly people want it because they see, these flash cars, big houses, swimming pools, people just throwing their money around. But it's kind of, isn't it like also what the government are pushing to make happen as well? Because I wonder, like in Taiwan, I can imagine it was pretty similar. Like it's had a huge growth the past 20 years. Like just before I got here, there weren't that many like shopping malls, if not any. Like I think there was like, just very, ordinary ones. But then, this money came in and, like all these, like where we're living now, it was all fish farms, all of it.
Right.
As far as the eye can see, there's no fish farms here anymore.
Mm.
There's still some in the north, and the south is still very predominantly fish farm. But yeah, that's like in less than a generation, right? You can see that change. So I wonder, like, because even if I think here we're just in this big apartment block, and yeah, we do actually kind of know the neighbors, and we do kind of like speak and go around your time, but as a whole, there's no, I think like you mentioned before about people going to get water. You know, even when I was younger, like we used to have a corner shop, and there just used to be queues out the door, and in that queue, people were just there chatting away, and
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
nobody was in a rush to move. Like, you know, everyone was just happy. There was always this woman just sat there, and you know, she was like she'd call Lucy, hey Lucy, and she'd always be there, and she'd just know everything. So just slowly, you know, that corner shop's not there, for example, and it's just got that's something that's happening worldwide, right?
I mean, you know, I have some strong beliefs, man. Like now, especially being here, you know, I'm raising my kids here. You know, my kids. This may sound crazy, but it's like I feel like I need to protect them from the U.S. machine, if you will, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I one of my a nightmare for me would be like dropping my kids off at, you know, the typical middle school or public high school in the US. You know what I mean? I just wouldn't feel comfortable doing it, you
Why?
know? Um, I guess to put it simply, I just the direction that the Western culture has gone to, especially in the United States, um, I just don't agree with it. I don't agree with the direction it's going, you know? And I wouldn't want my kids to be involved in that, you know? So like my kids are, you know, my kids are Filipino citizens. My kids have Filipino passports. You know, my kids are not there, and it's on purpose, not getting social security numbers. They won't have an American passport. They're not going to be U.S. citizens. They're going to be Filipino citizens, you know, and my future is here. You know, my legacy now is here. You know, that's the way I see it. And, you know, I don't know, you know, I don't think, you know, I think that there is some aspects of it here. For example, you know, you have one race, you have one religion to a certain degree. And I think, you know, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I think that in the US, you know, you kind of have a melting pot of everything. And I think that I think one of the side effects of that is um there isn't really a sense of peace. You know, I think it's a disturbing of peace, right? It's really I mean, I guess you can go and you see this a lot, right? You see, like even when I had my job, right? And when I was working in like the casino, and we would have like you go into the EDR, you know, the employee dining room, and you would see like all the nationalities would like group together. You know, we'd have
Mm.
like we had like an African, like an Ethiopians and African group. They would all stay together. You had the Filipinos would usually stick together. You had uh Asians in general, and the different Asians, you know what I mean, would sometimes it would be Asians, but sometimes the different type different countries would stay together. And you see that, you see kind of a divide, you know, and they kind of hang with their own. And I don't know. Here there's just this general peace. Hey, everybody's a Filipino here. You know what I mean? Uh Everybody seems to be on a general level. You know, there's some people that are doing really well. You know, you kind of have like rich and whatever, lower middle class or whatever you want to specify it as. But generally, everybody's kind of like the keeping up with the Joneses. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Ain't really people really not really doing that here. You know what I
Mm.
mean? It's
Yeah,
it's just different. It's a different. There's a, and I guess the word to describe it is just culture. You know, if you were to say what's the American culture, you know what I'm saying? I don't what American culture. You know, I think culture is it's I think it's important. I don't know, maybe in 100 years it won't be important. Maybe the whole world has becomes a melting pot. I don't know. But as of right now, I mean, I just feel a bit more a sense of peace, you know what I mean? A sense of calm, you know? I don't have as much anxiety here, you know what I mean? There's a
Mm.
bit more of a chill, you know? I mean, weed is illegal here, but yet people are chill. You know, they're almost a little bit, you know, like someone smoking weed in the US to chill out. Here, they're kind of just chill out. They don't smoke weed. You know, you know what I'm saying? So I guess I just want to be here. I don't know. Maybe in 100 years I wouldn't want to be here, but right now I think this is the place to be. I think as far as the people, you know, this isn't the place to be broke. Like if you don't have money, bro, you might not want to be here. You know, like if you don't, if you're not an entrepreneur, if you don't have a little bit of savings, if you've got a very small, pension or social security you're going to try to live on, this can be a rough place. You know, but if you're a go-getter, it's definitely, I believe in the emerging market. When they say emerging market, I mean, I feel it here. There's progress all around me. It definitely don't feel like it's going backwards. It ain't standing still. So it's progressing, and that's exciting to be a part of that. You know what I mean?
What's
To
the
watch.
unemployment like where you are? Is it like I'm just kind of just a wild guess is that people will kind of like find work, do everything they can to find work, or like is there that community where people will kind of like help each other out in that respect?
Yeah, it's a very interesting here, right? Because you kind of have this weird thing where, and I have owned businesses before and I've hired people and I've looked at resumes and things like this. And it's really interesting because um to work at McDonald's, you almost need like a college degree, right? It's this weird thing where like pretty much everywhere you go, especially like the bigger like a chains, like if you go to a McDonald's or here, or if you go to like a mall, more of the bigger chains, not the local small businesses, because they kind of have their own little rules that they abide by, but like your chains, your pawn shop chain or your whatever, right? You generally see like young, you know what I mean? It's like if you're over 30, you're too old. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of like generally you're seeing like between the ages of like 18 and 25, or maybe between 20 and 25 is like pretty much all of your employees, and but I think generally the game here is you're trying to work abroad. I mean, generally that's the game here, right? Education is very important. Education leads to probably a higher probability of going to work abroad. Filipinos are very proud. They're very proud of their country. They're very proud to be Filipinos, but they understand that going abroad is a great opportunity, and I think generally that's the target, you know. And if for some reason, I don't know, you're a young girl, you get pregnant, you end up marrying early or something like that, and those opportunities pass, it can get pretty tough. Hopefully your family has maybe a small business. Real estate is very important here. I know like where I'm from, Las Vegas, you have shopping centers, right? You have these big shopping centers and everything is pretty much pushed into the stock market, right? Everything is a corporation. Everything is shares of a corporation, right? You have shopping centers and then those are put in some pension program and, you can own pieces of it if you buy, REITs and all this stuff that they do. Well, here, it's not really like that. Here, it's like every building is owned by someone, you know? And I think those can be very important. If your family owns a building, if your family owns a piece of land, if your family owns something, hopefully they've been able to accumulate an asset or something like that. And that, that could last generations, right? If your family owns a building and the building is in a good location, you put a business on the first floor, you sell rice, you sell mini grocery store, or you sell a product, some kind of a small business. And then, hopefully if you're lucky, that dynamic plays out.
Yeah.
And then if that's the case, you don't have to go abroad. You could just stay, if your families can maintain, a middle class income or something like that.
Yeah, I always have pondered about this, about people, this is me, I've done it as well, like left my country to come and work in another country, but
Where were you from?
England,
England. Okay.
just outside Manchester. But yeah, I just wondered, like I do see there's like a big Indonesian and Filipino population here in Taiwan as well.
Mm.
But I do just wonder, like, people, for example, the Indonesian and Philippines, they come here and they want a better life, but actually the life they're living maybe is not that great, but they're just willing to make, it feels like they make that sacrifice to make that money over here, and not and they work, I think they work like 6 days a week. I think they will get Sunday off. So they work long hours, long days, and yeah, it's just that sacrifice that people make, isn't it? To go to another country, work as hard as they can, maybe save up their money, send it back home for other people to have a better life. Yeah, I just wonder, just like, it just, if you just stay in your own country, like, could you just carve out something for yourself and just have just a quality of life?
I'll tell you, if you could design a perfect if I could give advice to if I'm giving advice to a younger Filipino, I mean, if you could play it perfectly, I think the game would be get out of the country as soon as you can. Go get a job somewhere else, anything. Get out of the country. Make a foreign wage, right? But try to spend none of it. And then bring it all back and invest it. Buy a piece of land where your city is, buy that nice lot that you can, have a business on the first floor, good location that you can put a business on the first floor. And that you'll pretty much be set if you can do that. That would be the perfect ideal situation. You go make a 10-year sacrifice, right? From 18 to 28, you go and sacrifice in another country. Try to save up as much as you can. Let's say, hopefully, it's probably hard to do this, but I mean, let's say you could save up $100,000 in today's value. Bring 100,000 back, and then somehow manage to invest it, like, really good. There's a lot of different skills involved in that, so that'd be, the skill of getting out of the country, the skill of being an investor, the skill of, I mean, you can't really make too many mistakes in that time frame. But if you can execute it perfectly, I mean, I think that's the game, because the opportunity here is amazing.
If you got that bit of financial backing behind you, you mean?
I've got a Filipino friend now that's in our community, right? It's kind of interesting because I moved here. I was born in the U.S. and then moved here, right? And he was born here and then moved there. So he's in California and we talk, right? And it's very interesting because we kind of flip-flopped each other. But I'm telling him that you have the knowledge of back home. See, his idea was maybe he goes there, he never comes back. But I'm like, nah, man, that's not the move. I don't want to tell you what to do, but the move is get the money, come back. You know what I mean? That's the move, bro. You know what I mean? So I think he's starting to think now a little bit. Because I feel like that was the move. I kind of got lucked out, right? Because I'm born in the U.S., but I'm like the Filipino that worked abroad. That's how I feel. I'm like the Filipino that worked abroad. I just happen to be the Filipino that luckily was born there, and I didn't have to, jump through the hoops to get there. But I made the money there and then came back, right? Yeah. In some weird way, right? Because that's how I feel, And so now I'm back here. I invested my money and I was like, oh man, this was the move. This was the right move. I mean, I told you about my coconut deal.
Yeah.
I mean, and I had no competition. 40% yield on a collateralized land with guaranteed interest payments. I mean, only a black swan event could have taken that investment out. A once in 100-year typhoon knocks all my coconut trees down or something crazy. You know what I mean? Like I was in black swan territory. That's an investor's dream, make 40% yield, no competition.
It's so hard though, isn't it? Like if you were to tell, 18-year-olds to do that 10-year plan, it's really just hard for them because it's just at that age, it's the now, isn't it? And like trying to change someone's way of thinking, like if I think about me when I was, 18, it's just, good times, parties, and you know, you're not thinking 10 years. Unfortunately for me, I was not thinking 10 years ahead, but
See, I think this is where, you know, Web3 and crypto really ties into this very interestingly. Because, you know, I say a lot of different things. I say, you know, like one of the things I've been saying is for a lot of the Filipinos that are coming into our community, Splinterlands, we'll call them assets, cards, now land. These things are, for a lot of Filipinos, I'm watching a lot of Filipinos for the first time in their life. It's the first time they've ever really owned an asset, you know, and I call them micro assets. And I think what's happening here with Splinterlands is I have these epiphanies where I'm like, wait a minute, you know, I know we're calling it a game. They all these words like metaverse, game, virtual reality, you know, crypto, it all seems a little bit pixie dust a little bit sometimes. But when I look at it and I'm like, all right, I'm looking at this card. You can rent it out. It rents, right? It never doesn't rent, right? There's certain cards, you buy it, you put it up for rent, it rents, right? It rents 90% of the time, it's rented out, right? And I'm like, it's mimicking an asset. It's mimicking, like I compare it to a coconut tree. You know, I say that a lot of Filipinos, I say that there's a barrier of entry. I call it a barrier of entry. And the idea is that in the legacy world, we have barriers of entry. You see it, I guess in gaming, we call it nerfing, right? We call it when things get nerfed, right? In the legacy world, in the analog world, I think we call it a barrier of entry. And we're seeing this now play out in the United States with like housing, right? Everybody keeps talking about how it's harder and harder to own a house. You know, the house prices just go up over time, and it gets harder to get in them. Now banks don't want to lend money. It's hard to qualify. Interest rates are up. House prices it's harder and harder to get in there. I call this a barrier of entry. And I think the dynamic there that's at play is it's like if a person was able to get into a castle, all right, now that they've gotten the castle, right, and they're living in the castle, right, they're not necessarily they're already in. They got the castle. They're living in the castle. So now what's the next step for the let's call it, I don't know, the king or the whatever, the lucky ones that are in the castle. What's the next thought? To ensure that you get to stay in the castle, right? This is where the moat comes in, right? Now you build a moat, right? You build a thin area. You build you take the wooden door down and you make it metal, right? Whatever you got to do to ensure that now that you're in there, you want to stay in there. And I think this is what we're experiencing in the world right now. I think that I'm a big believer in the fourth turning, right? Have you heard of the fourth turning?
no.
So the fourth turning is this idea of it's a book written I think 1997 it was published or whatever, but the basic principle there is that a turning is 80 years, which is actually the length of the average human life, right? Around 80 years. So that's called a turning. And in that turning, you have generations. Generations are 20 years, right? And so generally a turning is 4 generations. Okay. And without going into extreme detail, I'll just hit the bullet points. One of the bullet points for the turning is, have you ever heard the saying, there's a saying, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times, right? And then hard times create strong men, and it starts over again. So that's one of the principles that goes into this turning idea. So the idea is that the turning plays out and then it starts all over again, right? And where we're supposed to be at right now in this turning is the boomers are the end of the last turning and the millennials are the beginning of the next turning, which is that 80-year cycle playing out. And the cycle starts and ends with usually a major crisis. And the crisis where the last turning ended was 2008. It was the financial crisis of 2008. Okay, that was the big pivotal change. Now, the generation is 22 years. So 2008 was when we started. This one's going to end. This generational period is going to end in 2030. Okay. And, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. I'm not one of these guys that, comes up with some sort of an idea, but the general principle behind the turning is just it's age and it's life expectancy, right? Which is a factor that's guaranteed, right? And especially when I'm an investor. I have an investor part of me, right? A strong part of me is an investor part of me. And as an investor, when you can have a guarantee, a part of an equation that's a guarantee, right? Because what investors hate is uncertainty, right? I want certainty. You know what I mean? And if I can get certainty, right, I could make a bet. I could make a bet on that long term, and I could have better odds, better chance of getting a return, right? And so the turning, to me, is huge. It's one of the biggest factors that I think about when I'm thinking about everything that's playing out, whether it's Splinterlands, crypto, Bitcoin, whatever. I think about the age and how age factors into the equation. And I think it's the biggest factor. Okay. And I do this, and this is a simple, you could do this in your real life. You can test this out, and I'll show you how you can actually test this out and see it playing out in real life. Just go talk to someone that's in certain age groups, right? A boomer's age group is 59 to 77. I think that's the current age group. 59 to 77 is a boomer. Millennial is, I think the oldest millennial right now is 42 years old, right? So that's when the millennials start. And then you have Generation X in between there. Talk to a boomer. Okay. And bring up issues that are important to, I'm a millennial, right? I'm 40 years old. I'm born in 1982. I'm an older millennial. If I talk to a boomer and I bring up issues that are important to me and just let them talk. As a matter of fact, I did this yesterday, right? I was talking to a guy and I bring up issues that are important to me. Crypto, maybe even NFTs, throw into that stuff and just listen to them talk. And you will realize the huge difference. The issues that are important to a guy that's in his 60s than the issues that are important to a guy that's in his late 30s or his 30s or 40s. Totally two different things. And this is where the turnings come into play, right? And generally, generations are defined by the events that happen within that generation's period. Like you've heard this, like, oh, the Great Depression of whatever, 1930 or whatever. My grandpa was in that and he never put a dime in the bank, right? These are generational. If a guy within that age group could sit at a coffee shop with a group of guys in that same age group, they would all just have everything. The conversation would flow as they talk about the issues. I don't put my money in the bank. Neither do I. I do this all the time. This happened to me like 2 days ago. I was on a private Discord conversation, right? I was talking to a Splinterlands player, and I was like, man, did you hear the town hall the other day where Agrod said, maybe you picked this up too. Agrod made a very subtle comment where he said he cashed out his 401k. I don't know if you remember that. He said it like 2 town halls ago. Said, I cashed out my 401k. I put it in crypto or something like that, he said. And I was talking to this guy. I did the same thing. So I related to that, right? I'm about the same age as Agrod, right? And I'm like, I did the same thing, right? When I left the US, I was like, what the hell do I need a 401k for? It wasn't very big. It was like $14,000 or something like that. You know what I mean? But I was like, what the hell do I need this for? I'm going nowhere with this, right? I ain't a part of nothing with this, And, I didn't really put it together. You don't put these things together like, oh, this is a generational thing, right? This is how a lot of guys my age are thinking, right? But then you get into a game, it's sort of generally it's a lot of, you see a lot of guys with the same age, they're talking, and then you're like, oh. So I'm talking to this guy on Discord, and I said, you know what? It's funny because Agrod said he cashed his 401k. I'm like, I did the same thing, and he goes, so did I. Right. And I'm like, I could have predicted it. You know what I mean? I could have been like, yeah, did you too? You know what I mean? Like, and it's so funny because I don't know if everybody is, and I think this is what's very interesting about your podcast, because your podcast is interviewing these guys and it's getting a little bit personal. And I think it's bringing out these things. And I think potentially it has the ability to build that community, create that, cohesion or whatever, you know what I mean? As we realize that we have a lot in common, and I'll say this, and I don't mean to exclude people, sometimes I offend people when I start talking about this age dynamic, because people that are older get offended. Oh, wait, I'm in Splinterlands and I'm this old, or guys that are too young get offended or something like that. But I do believe that Splinterlands is in line with the millennial movement. I think it is perfectly aligned with the fourth turning. I think it snaps in there very, very, very perfectly. And I'm here on purpose, right? I'm not one of these guys that ended up in Splinterlands because like I saw an ad and I wanted to play the game or whatever. Like I handpicked Splinterlands for certain reasons, and I'm here on purpose, right? And I think what's interesting about that is because I am very in tune with like myself. I reflect a lot. I think about my decisions. If I make a decision that I realize I'm not in tune with, it doesn't seem right, I stop. I'm a guy, I don't mind changing. I can drop something on a hat. I can pick up something else. I can go in a different direction. I can learn. I'm that type of a dude. And so what happened, and I've noticed this now that I'm 40 years old, I have a little bit of past now that I can reflect upon. I can go back 20 years. I can go back 10 years and think about, the different decisions I've made, why I made them and whatnot. And what I've found now at 40 years old, as I go back, I realized that, I've always been the type of person where like I'm kind of in tune with myself. So I kind of like dig in, like, what do you really want, bro? You know what I mean? You want to move to the Philippines? And I kind of surrender to myself. You know what I mean? I'm kind of a guy, I surrender to myself. I'm not this guy that's like, I can't quit my job, or I can't give this up, or whatever. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm engaged. I don't want to get engaged to this girl. Drop it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to dwell. I don't take me 5 years to figure it out. You know what I mean? Done. Boom. Next. Right. And so what I think has happened to me because of this dynamic that I have is somehow I've found myself in line with my millennial, my kind of my age. I think it's played a big part in just the experience that I've had as a millennial, and then acting on those experiences to keep myself in line with what I need to do to make it through, so that I could support my family and not fall on my face. And you know what I mean? So that I can support myself, and boom, boom, boom. And so for that, I've been very in line with what I need to do as a millennial, as my age group. How do I survive this? Right. Just like, and if you look at like every age group had to deal with certain, my daughter at 12 years old had to deal with COVID as a 12-year-old, and her friends still talk about to this day their experience. They didn't get to go to school for 2 years, and she communicated with her friends through cell phones. You know what I mean? And that experience at her age with her demographic will be something that they carry through, not the same way that I did, experiencing it as a father with a family, with a wife, with kids. You know what I mean? With a business that had to be shut down by the government. I experienced it a different way at my age as a man. You know what I mean? As a 37-year-old millennial man, right? And that is going to affect me. And maybe when I'm 50 years old, there'll be something I'm doing because of remembering what COVID. Maybe the government will do that again. I have to protect myself. Maybe I need to have a backup plan, an insurance policy for my family, because what if that happens? What if something like that happens again? Now I know the power of the government, blah, 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 and how I experience that and how I do it as who I am. So my daughter, same thing. She'll experience it with her age group a certain way too. I don't know. Maybe the way that they use the cell phone is different now. It's a lifeline for them or whatever. But I think you get my point.
Yeah.
So I think a big factor here, is, and I say this more, I kind of want to tie it back to Splinterlands, because that's what a lot of this is about, is I don't believe it's a coincidence that I'm in Splinterlands. I don't believe it's just blind luck that I'm finding myself here with guys that I'm finding a lot of similarity with. I think that this is part of the movement. I think there's a movement here, you know, and we could unpack this. I don't want to rant too much, but we could unpack this because even with the way that, you know, the commercial real estate, for example, it looks like it's just ready to implode on itself, right? For example, in the United States, just ready to explode. And then all of a sudden I find myself buying virtual land in a metaverse. You know what I'm saying? Is that just like, oh, because, you know, some Web3 game did it and it worked, and then Splinterlands just copied it, and you know what I mean? Like, we could go through this. Well, there's a logical explanation to why, and blah. It's fun. It's going to create it. But then there's a deeper one. Like, let's peel back the onion a little bit and let's dig a little bit deeper, right? Is it not a coincidence that, you know, the real estate in the real world looks like it's just like absolutely being, you know, crapped on and, you know, just destroyed, and the whole aspect of, you know, having a home to live in and start a family is just absolutely like, you know what I mean? And now we're finding ourselves, you know, rebuilding these these virtual worlds that mimic the real world, you know? Because I have this theory that I call this, and I've never heard anybody say this, I came up with this myself. I said, I'm calling it the boomers' last stand. And I don't mean this to, I'm not picking on that generation. I'm not at all. I'm just, I guess, look, if you're a millennial, you might be looking at me thinking, oh, I'm about his age, and maybe you're reflecting on my beliefs and your own beliefs. Or if you're not a millennial, I'm giving you insight into how a millennial might feel, right? So I think for everybody here, what I'm saying here is just, it's just to better everybody. I'm just trying to speak, and maybe everybody can learn from it in their own ways. But I do believe that there's this aspect of the analog world, or the legacy world, if you will. There is a very strong feeling I have where it feels like a Ponzi scheme. I think everything's a Ponzi scheme. Okay. But this whole sort of legacy world, and sort of this, the stock market, real estate, you know, throw all the legacy assets in there. It really feels like a Ponzi scheme that's coming to an end. And what's happening is you have sort of the millennial generation, which is realizing that they're not included. They weren't recruited into the Ponzi scheme. They're not part of it. They're not even asked to be part of it. You know what I mean? It's almost like they're asking us to just sort of like, it's weird too, because there's like, go play, you know, like I was talking to a guy that was in that age bracket the other day, and I almost got the sense like he was like, you know, your millennial generation is kind of lost just playing games. Just go play games, kid. You know, it reminds me of playing the Nintendo NES when I was a kid and my parents were working and trying to pay bills and stuff like this. It was like the kids are playing Mario Brothers and Zelda and, you know, Final Fantasy, just get lost in video games, you know? And it's sort of like, that's how I feel like we're treating now. Is the only difference is like now we're old, you know, I'm like a dude with a family, and, you know, the boomer parents are in their 60s, and now they're like, now we're playing games to save the world. You know what I mean? Like, because what I think is going to happen is, man, I got this strange feeling that what's happening is like, I don't think there's going to be a smooth transition. I don't think we go from analog to this technology driven digital world in a smooth transition. I don't even think I need to guess at that. I think if you're not like zombified in your job and focused on like everyday activities, if you just sit back and just take a deep breath and think about things, I think it's very obvious what's happening. You know, this legacy world is just on fire. You know,
Well, it seems to be happening now, right?
Like very clearly, if you sit back and think about it, right? If you're just being honest about the scenario, if you're not in some sort of a denial bubble or some weird bias because you're invested or you're heavily invested in something or something like that, if you just sit back and think, right? Commercial real estate. You know, my sister's Gen X. Okay, my sister's a couple years older than me. All right. During COVID, she asked me to take a look. My sister is in some investment, some retirement investment thing that she was sold and she's been contributing to. And she asked me to take a look at it. She has no idea what it's invested in. She says, maybe you could take a look at this because you're good with money. Take a look at this for me. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, 60% of the damn thing was invested in commercial real estate, right? My sister's retirement, one of her retirement backbones is 60% office, freaking office buildings, commercial real estate. What the hell? You know, I didn't even know what to say to her. I was like, Kara, this don't look good, but I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you might want to diversify or have an insurance policy. You know what I mean? She bought some Bitcoin, actually. She got some Bitcoin at $9,000. Not a lot, but enough to potentially hedge this. I didn't want to talk her out of the investment she's been investing in. And her friend is the one who sold her the product that she pays into or whatever. So I didn't want to get too involved in that. But I did manage to get her to buy some Bitcoin at about $9,000, you know, which I feel is a hedge. I feel like that's how I set her up. I created a hedge for that. But what I'm saying is that office buildings are done. They're like, it's just a controlled demolition in a way, right? It's just like, yeah, you can't reprice office buildings to their intrinsic value now, right? You can't reprice housing to reflect, a roof over your head, and it's all inflated. It has to stay inflated. The entire system will implode on itself. And so it's just a controlled demolition. I don't want to be a part of a controlled demolition. I'm a 40-year-old dude. You know what I mean? Like I'm supposed to be in my prime right now. This is supposed to be the best money-making years of my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be part of a controlled demolition. I want to exit, man. I want to be in a parallel universe. You're rebuilding something. Because I don't want to, I don't want to wait. This could take 10 years, bro. This could take 15 years. In 15 years, I'm going to be 55, man. I ain't trying to wait 15, 20 years to start. You know what I mean?
Well,
so I feel like, yeah, go ahead, man.
No, I was just going to say, like, when you're talking about, now you're talking about, the state of land and property. Let's just talk about your land, man, because that's, I think personally, I'm interested to know what you are going to do with yours, but I am also interested in what you are doing for, like, with TeamPH as well with regards to land, because let's kind of unpack that, man. But first, let's talk about that occupied legendary that you pulled, man. That was like, I saw the stream and
I'm gonna tell you something you might not know, man, which actually gets even crazier than the occupied legendary. So what happened was I originally bought a plot. I mean, I bought a region, right? Originally in the pre-sale. And then I bought, later on, I forgot how long later, but it was like, I don't know, after pre-sale or something like that, I bought a track for $8,000, right? It just felt like it was at a low. I thought it was a good deal. I bought the track and I sat on that too. And then I had like 20 plots or something like that. So that's what I ended up with. And what happened was I claimed my track and my region at the same time. I got region number 61 and my track is in 60. And I surveyed the region and I did all that stuff and I got the occupied, and obviously all the guaranteed stuff. I knew I was going to get a castle and 9 keeps and all that good stuff. The occupied was exciting because I knew how rare they were and I wasn't guaranteed one, right? And so I think there's only supposed to be like 42 in the whole game. So, even 150 regions, only less than 1/3 are going to get one. So I was really excited about that. But then what happened was the track that I had, I don't know, not for any good reason, but I sat on it. I didn't survey it. It was sitting in region 60 and I just left it there. And then what happened was everybody surveyed except for 3. It was me and 2 other guys. And I kind of made up my mind at that moment that I wasn't going to survey. I didn't want to survey until those 2 guys did. And I also had an idea that if one guy surveyed, I would try to buy the other guy's track. So, but I couldn't negotiate 2 guys. So I was going to wait for one to survey. I would then try to buy the other track. And if I couldn't, I was determined to not survey the track, because I didn't want to be responsible for getting the castle at the keep. So I figured if I wait to the end, I had no choice in the matter, right? If I survey and I get a keep, I'll be mad at myself. Oh, I shouldn't have surveyed. If I just say I'm waiting to the end, no matter what, I get what's ever left. That was my thought process. So couple days went by, it's three guys. I check it, once a day or once every other day, and still three guys. And then finally, I think the proposal or something like that, one guy surveyed. I'm like, oh, there's one left. So I found his name on Discord and I private messaged him. And short stories, I asked him, hey, bro, you want to sell your plot? I said, we got a 50-50 shot at the castle. You want to sell your track? I don't know. Maybe you want to buy mine. Let's talk. And it quickly came to the idea that I didn't really want to sell and he didn't really want to sell either. So we just kind of left it at that. And then about, I don't know, a couple days ago, man, I check, still both of us didn't survey. And then I woke up like, I don't know, a couple days ago, and I look and I see he surveyed. Right. And I'm like, okay. So now I'm going to click the little button on Splinterlands for the castle, and I'm going to see if nothing highlights, it means the castle's in my track. So I'm looking at the castle button and I click it, and there's no castle.
Oh
my God. I'm just yelling at my computer, man. I'm like, I got it. So,
oh, wow. Congrats,
so actually, there's a track. It's not reflecting because I didn't survey it yet. I'm not sure, man. I'm still thinking. I'm whatever. I don't know what I'm thinking. I've got a bunch of different ideas in my brain, but I wasn't planning on having another castle. And obviously I'm short cards and totems and everything like everyone else. So I'm still sitting there like, I don't know what to do, man. I'm not really sure how I'm going to play it. So I'm just leaving it unsurveyed for now. Right. So that's why it's not really reflecting. There's one or two people noticed, but most people don't notice because since I didn't survey, it's not really reflecting in my rich list and, that I have two castles. But essentially I've got the track with the castle in it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Are you just not surveying because you think it will keep its value because it's not surveyed?
Mango's my good friend, right? And so I was talking, me and Mango meet up in real life. And so I did meet up with Mango. We were drinking a coffee and he said, don't survey it, and, he's just, I asked for his opinion and that was his opinion. And so that probably had some sway on me because I was like, all right, why? And then I started thinking about it. And he was like, you're already guaranteed the castle, right? I don't really have the cards to operate it yet. I think there is a type of person that is excited to, for example, if I reveal the castle and I sell the castle, the person that would buy it's not really the original owner of the castle, right? It's resold. I'm not saying this is a great reason, but I'm just giving you a reason, right? If it's unsurveyed and someone was to potentially buy the track or buy the castle that way as an unsurveyed, maybe there's a person that's interested. I mean, once you survey, you can't go back, right? So it's irreversible. So might as well wait, and of course right now, I guess the SPS airdrops, but we factored the dollar value of the SPS airdrops, and it's like, what am I, $6 a day or something like that, $5 a day. If I wait 2 months or 3 months, is it really that big of a deal? Not really. So I think I've just come to the idea where it's like, I'll just wait, because there might be someone out there, and I'm not that I'm interested in selling it at this moment. I think land is way too undervalued. I think we are in a nasty bear market. We've been in a bear market for a while. I'm not saying we're at the bottom, but we feel like we have gone down a lot, And I'm a big believer that land has I think there's a movement behind the whole land thing in the metaverse stuff like Sandbox, Decentraland, Axie Infinity,
Have you studied and looked at the other games that have introduced land?
Yeah, I'm pretty in tune to what's going on in the space. I'm a Bitcoiner, I would probably call myself a Bitcoin maxi, but I mean, I guess I'm not since I play Splinterlands, so, but I mean, I'm as close as you could probably get to a Bitcoin maxi, but that also owns crypto, you know. So I'm a big believer in that. So I have those core principles that a Bitcoiner would have, if you will. Um, I believe that Bitcoin is the millennials' real estate. You know, I believe that the stock market was the boomers' Bitcoin. If you look at what the boomers did, right? The boomers kind of all unconsciously or unconsciously, purposefully or unpurposefully, they all kind of decided they were going to all kind of work together to push the stock market. And if you look at the stock market, right, secular bull market or whatever, right, it's never, you could have bought the dip, right? As a boomer, you could have just basically just bought your whole entire life, which is what most of them done, right? That's the retirement. Most of boomers' retirement is just connected to the stock market. Mm-hmm. And essentially what they did is, it's almost in a weird way, it's almost like what we're doing with Bitcoin. There's sort of like this movement where it's like, if we all buy Bitcoin, if we hodl, right, then it will come true. I think that's what boomers did with the stock market. I mean, I think maybe in a certain way it's genius. Hey, if we all contribute, if we all get a job and do our part, the stock market will just go up and we could all just ride it for our whole lives. And that's pretty much what they've done.
Yeah, I was listening to this guy on YouTube. His name escapes me. I listen to him every day. But anyway, yeah, he was like one of these original, Bitcoiners back in the day, and he was just like saying, really, it shouldn't have really taken off. It was just that belief within the core group of people. And if it wasn't for, like you just said then, if it wasn't for that belief, that kind of, that long-term view, we wouldn't be where we are. Well, Bitcoin wouldn't be anywhere near where it is now.
And, I think this is what's happening. Let's take it back to Splinterlands. Like, I think this is what's happening with Splinterlands. I really literally think that it's millennials. If you read, like, if you Google fourth turning, I mean, here's what it says. The end of the cycle of the crisis phase is also known as the fourth turning, when the hero generation enters young adulthood, faces off against the prophet generation that is entering elderhood. In this case, it's the boomer generation retires and the millennial generation takes the wheel. I literally think what's unfolding right before our face, we're getting caught up in like short-term stuff, the noise, let's call that the noise. Splinterlands on a macro, we get caught up in the noise, right? It's, what did aggros say yesterday? Oh, this change they're making, the damn promo card, right? That's too expensive. This is like, I understand, like, if for those of you people that want to, for those people that are like passionate, can get involved in those daily things. But all I'm trying to say is, don't lose sight of the bigger picture. That's what I'm trying to bring into focus. I think there's a bigger force at play here, right? And I think that Splinterlands is part of that. And maybe not specifically Splinterlands, but land and NFTs and crypto and the things that Splinterlands, not necessarily Splinterlands, but throw Axie Infinity in, throw Sandbox in there, throw Decentraland, throw Gala Games, all this stuff. This is all part of it, right? I think what it is it's millennials coming to the realization of adulthood. Something interesting, like me and Mango, right? Mango is like 38 years old. I'm 40, right? We sit down and eat. Me and Mango's fathers passed away within a year of each other. Mango's dad just passed away a couple of years ago. My dad passed away a year before that, right? I mean, age is a factor, right? Like, when you lose your dad, nothing throws a young man into being a man like your father passing away. You know what I mean? And millennials are going through this now. Like, that's what millennials are dealing with now. We're starting to deal with our fathers passing away and taking the wheel, becoming the breadwinner, having our own families. And this dynamic plays directly into crypto.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like you did mention it before, and I wanted to mention it. It's kind of like, it's just the way humans just find a way, don't they? If something's not working, you find a way, just that creative spark in you. And this is what I feel is like just, yeah, happening with Web3, with land as well, right?
And there's I listen, and yeah, and I'll take it back and I'll say, look, for anybody if this ever makes it out and other people listen to it, or even you, research it. And I think you'll have a lot of aha moments. You'll just be like, wow, I don't know how many people are thinking about the age dynamic and how that plays into it. Life expectancy, right? You're young, you're middle-aged, and you're old, and you die. That's just fact. Every single person's on that road, on that journey. That's one thing we all have in common, regardless. And so that dynamic, that guaranteed dynamic, more guaranteed than anything, that age dynamic is playing a huge factor here, right? Millennials are inheriting. They're starting to inherit wealth. They're starting to become men, adults, and we're going to be shaping. This happens in every generation. Every generation that gets into that middle age, especially the men and whatever, they start to shape the world. And so it's not a coincidence that like we're battling the world with games. This is like our escape. The metaverse is like, the world is burning. Where do I go for my peace? A game. Boomers aren't doing that. Boomers aren't playing Mario Brother NES to reminisce. They have their own escape. They have their own thing that they do. Maybe it's smoking. My dad smoked weed for a long time. Maybe that's why weed is legal in the US. Boomers old. They want to smoke weed. They want it to be legal. I don't know. Right. But isn't that interesting? Right. So like these are the dynamics. And maybe for the millennials, it's gaming. We're gonna shape the world. We're gonna solve the world's problems through games. I have this weird feeling that this is a crazy thought I don't share a lot, but I have this weird idea that virtual real estate is sort of going to be this place that kind of like, I'll use an analogy. Okay. It's sort of like, as a millennial, I feel like, imagine you're living in a village and there's a fire that's coming. You're living in I don't know, there's a forest and there's a fire coming and it's coming. Maybe you've got a friend that called you from down there. It's like, there's a fire coming, bro. It's coming your way. Right. And you try to warn people and you start digging a hole and you're going to like hide in this hole while the fire comes over and just burns everything to the ground. Right. So you start digging this hole because you're going to hide out in it. And before the fire gets there, before it's obvious to everyone, you look like a crazy man, right? This is how it feels to be in Splinterlands, buying virtual land. Go tell a boomer what you're doing in Splinterlands. Go sit down with someone over the age of 60 and explain to them what you're doing in Splinterlands, and just listen. Don't judge it. Don't be like, oh, you don't know what the fuck you're talking. Don't say it. I challenge everybody to do this. And then just listen to what they say back. Now, maybe I know that there's some guys that are tech savvy, and I'm not saying that every single one. I know there's an exception, but I'm talking in general. Go talk to your general one at work, whatever. Tell them what you're doing in Splinterlands. Okay. What I think could be happening, I could be totally wrong, but I'm just going to take a stab at this. What I feel like part of what we're doing in Splinterlands, we're digging a hole, bro. I'm going to hide out in a hole while commercial real estate crumbles, while the boomers are trying to patch up the dam while it's bursting in different places. And I just want to I'm going to play a game and hide out, buy virtual real estate, right? And then what's going to happen, I believe, is that we're going to rebuild. And by the way, this could happen over a 20-year period. I'm 40. The rebuilding could start at 50s, at my late 50s, 60s, potentially, right? Potentially passing on some sort of a crypto sort of future to my kids, right? Here's how you hold Bitcoin safely to my daughter, who's now in her 20s. You got to hold this for your future. Don't sell it all. HODL, sell a little bit if you need to, right? Here's safe ways to, that's what I'm going to go through with my kids or whatever, right? And this is the turning. See, the turning is very interesting, because we're not transitioning from a generation to a generation. We're going through an entire turning. And this is why I also believe we're just seeing this huge sort of gap between the boomers and the millennials. It's huge. Almost this like, and I had many conversations with my dad about Bitcoin, about different things, right? And deep conversations. And it's sort of like, his answer once to me was just like, I hope it works out for you, son. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't relate with anything you're freaking saying. Like, you might as well be speaking another language, but you're my son. I love you. And I hope it works out for you. And if it's not my father, you'll probably just get what are you talking about, bro? You know what I mean? Like, and so anyways, I believe that is, to me, that's an indicator of that 80 year, that massive turning. I don't think there's going to be as big of a leap. I'm not going to see that big turning between me and my kids. For example, we go to a restaurant and we go out to eat. I take my 13-year-old with me. We're all on our phones. I don't even yell at my daughter for being on her phone. You know what I mean? Like, we're just all kind of like, we talk as a family, but you know what? A phone's interesting, man. We're in a coffee. I'm drinking a coffee on my phone and my wife's, looking at recipes or whatever she's doing. And my daughter's talking to her friends and we're just all kind of like together and chilling and we're using technology. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm in my office. My daughter comes in and hangs out with me sometimes. She's drawing on her coloring book or what. It's technology, man. We're enjoying technology together. I don't see that big of a leap. But when I look at my dad and I look at me, and my dad he's not using internet. You know what I mean? He's using it. Don't get me wrong. My dad did Google searches. He watched YouTube videos and all that, but like, he ain't connected to it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I see the millennials and like I see my daughter and whatnot. Anyways, and I just don't see I don't see that huge gap between my daughter's generation. I don't see this huge, like, I can't understand that. That's kids are doing that. I don't see it. So anyways, man, massive ranting going on, bro.
No, it's great. Just rant away. What have you seen from the other projects of land that excites you about the future of Splinterlands land? The possibilities.
I think that there's a concern that I've seen bring up. I think that the concern will get a little bit louder. I think there's always something that tries to shake people, right? And I think one of the things that could shake people in Splinterlands is this idea that we're on Hive. We might miss it, right? We might be too small over here on Hive. No one notices us. We're not on Ethereum or whatever, right? I think that whole thing is bullcrap. My feeling about Splinterlands is it's good enough. Could it be better? Yeah. Could Agro have made better decisions and Yabbit made better decisions and Nate made better decisions and whatever? Sure. Could it have been worse? Absolutely. Could have been worse. DEC could have just gone to 0. Could have gone to 10 cents. I don't know. Could still go there. But my point is that I think it's good enough. For us, and what I mean by good enough is I think we're seeing a lot of arbitraging going on. Everything is getting arbitraged. It's getting arbitraged within Splinterlands. It's getting arbitraged within play to earn or blockchain gaming, and it's getting arbitraged on a crypto level. And what I mean by that is, in Splinterlands right now, there's a Bitcoiner. I'm a Bitcoiner, but not counting me. There's Bitcoiners in Splinterlands right now. As a matter of fact, I have 2 friends that are Bitcoiners. I have a private Bitcoin group. I've had it since long time, 7-8 years or something like that. I've had a Bitcoin group. And I've got 2 friends from my Bitcoin group that play Splinterlands. So we have Bitcoiners in Splinterlands. Okay. Bitcoin is not going to go to $1 million, and a castle in Splinterlands is going to be 10 grand. Ain't going to happen. Because the guy that has $1 million Bitcoin is going to say to himself, I'm a casual player of Splinterlands. I could own a castle for 10 grand for 0.00001 Bitcoin. I'll peel that off and own a castle. Fuck it. I'm bored. So I don't think anything is safe from not getting arbitraged. The big question is Splinterlands going to 0? Is Splinterlands going to go bankrupt? Is Agro yeah, but stealing money is the whole thing a sham. As long as you could say no to that with confidence, it's good enough.
Mm.
You know, we're in the game. We've got our foot in the door, and we'll get arbitrage. And I'll be honest with you, I probably wouldn't be as confident to say that as I am with seeing. I think what happened with the Axie pump, and I dug into the Axie pump pretty deep. You know, the last bull run in play to earn, whatever you want to call it. That to me was a proof of concept. You know, that proved the concept, right? Because you don't just pump like that and then go away and go to zero. Everything goes to zero. Like something happened there, right? And so I believe that was a proof of concept. That proved that, for example, these crazy beliefs that I have, because I've had these from before. You know, I was in Splinterlands thinking all this stuff from before. You know, I bought land with the idea that this was, I didn't know it was going to take 2 years, but I bought land with the idea that I was part of something bigger. I didn't buy land thinking, oh, I'm going to flip it, or I'm speculating, or, oh, it seems like it'll be fun. I'm bored. I'm in lockdown, COVID lockdown. I'll just buy some land. I bought it purposefully. You know, I bought it thinking I was going to create jobs for Filipinos originally, right? I didn't know what it was going to look like, but that was kind of my vision. You know, that was before this. There was no such thing as a scholar. Remember scholarships?
Mm.
That word wasn't even existed yet. Then later came Axie scholarships, you know, and things like that. So for me, I don't know. I'm old enough now. I've made enough decisions and investments in my life. I would never put all my eggs in one basket, but at the same time, I feel confident. I feel confident where I'm at. I feel confident decisions I'm making. I'm in Splinterlands on purpose. I'm in land on purpose. And I think that what's going to happen, timing, I'm not good at timing. Timing is my weakness. I'm usually too early to stuff. That's usually my downside. I'm too early. I get a feeling and then I'm in and then I'm early. It's way too early. Like I feel like that I'm in the Philippines. Now I hear the passport bros. Now it's like cool to like go abroad, right? Like I did it when no one, like it didn't really feel like anyone was doing what I was doing. I didn't have one friend that moved abroad. I didn't know anybody that I could talk to. Now it's passport bros and there's YouTube videos on it everywhere. You know, it's like a cool thing to do now. But I think I'm way too early, dude. I did it way too early. You know what I mean? Like I'm buying coconut farms in the jungle, man. And I'm just like, I'm making 40%, man. Where is everybody? You know what I mean? I'm like 20 years too early on coconut farms. You know what I mean?
But that's a good thing to get in early though, right?
I think I'm too early, bro. You know what I mean? And I've actually tried to really, I've tried to humble myself to this part of myself because that's my weakness. And so I look at it and I go, I feel really strongly about this, but bro, because I have to go through cycles, you know what I mean? You go ups and downs, emotional roller coasters and things like this. It's hard. It's hard to be early, really early to stuff. You know, people think it's easy. Oh, if I could go back, I'd have bought alpha packs. Bro, do you know what it was like to go through? I didn't go through it, but I went through it on different. The hard forking from Steam to Hive, and then holding your alpha packs and having to move it over to a new chain, bro. You would. Bro, 95%, you couldn't hold it through that. I'm gonna tell you what, man. I stressed out when the Bitcoin Cash hard fork. Bro, I freaking man, I became so hardened through that because I thought we were in trouble, man. You know, but this is what people don't understand. They're like, oh, if I could go back, I'd have bought Bitcoin, man, at a dollar. I'm like, bro, you have no idea what you would have had to go through. And if you'd have made it out the other end, bro, you're a hardened dude. So that's why this whole like never turn on an OG. You know, these people, they say OG's this, OG's that. Dude, you never turn on an OG. Never turn on an investor. You have no idea. Because if you make it through the other side of this thing and you become an OG, you're going to feel the same way. When some guy comes in talking about how you're lucky, you were here, if I was here, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, like, you know, those OGs just made, excuse me, you know, probably like we do now. And they just have that belief in the game, belief in the people behind the game, right? But it's kind of like what we were saying before about Bitcoin. If it wasn't for those people who had that initial belief in Splinterlands, the game wouldn't be here now, right?
It's true. It's true. Now I think there is some lucky guys because I saw some luck being thrown around in
Okay.
Splinterlands Discord, for example, right? The lucky is the guy that, he was buying drugs on Silk Road and he needed Bitcoin to buy the drugs on Silk Road, some medication or whatever, weed, whatever, right? So he bought a bunch of Bitcoins. He bought more than he needed. He ended up buying the medication, closes the wallet, forgets about it, right? Suddenly he sees on, CNN saying Bitcoin's at 20,000. He opens up his wallet and he still has 100 left over from the drugs he bought on Silk Road, right? Lucky. And probably what he's going to go through next is going to be hard. Learning lessons, hard lessons that he's going to have to deal with from coming into wealth that way without growing into it, right? Fine.
Yeah.
Splinterlands 2, we've heard it. The guy that bought the alpha packs, I think there was a story. I think he made a video. The guy that bought the alpha packs and then got busy in real life and came back, and his alpha packs now are worth whatever they're worth. Selling them $100 a pop, and he had like 1,000 of them he bought. That luck. Luck. But if you're holding crypto, man, if you're holding something in this space, an NFT, crypto, Bitcoin, bruh, you're earning your battle. And look, this is crazy because this takes us back to the fourth turning. I believe this plays into it. See, the hodler, I can't tell you how many guys I've experienced that are not, I'm experiencing this as a millennial. I'm experiencing this as a 40-year-old dude now at 30, whenever I bought Bitcoin, I'm experiencing it from my experience. Okay. This is about, if you look at what the boomers did with the stock market, okay. I believe this is what our generation has to do with Bitcoin. Becoming an adult and taking control of your finances and being responsible, not being in denial, not being in the matrix. You know what I mean? Like, look at the Matrix movie, right? When Neo came out of the Matrix, really hard, right? The reality is tough. And I think that's what a 40-year-old dude is definitely experiencing right now. The millennials are definitely experiencing that. I can't speak for every other age bracket, but I know that the millennials, I have a lot of friends that are millennials, they're experiencing that.
Well, I think with regards to Bitcoin, and this is what I think about Bitcoin. If you have done your research, if you know why it's here, why people believe in it, then for me it's just like a no-brainer. For me, I'm gonna be keeping my Bitcoin, and with SPS and Splinterlands and the cards, that's like another problem. Sometimes I will just every occasionally, even like recently with that new card that comes out, like any kind of like negativity comes out, I kind of start to kind of second guess myself and just like think, is this gonna kind of keep going? But the reason why I just always just give myself a slap around the face and just say no, it's you just got to kind of be patient. It's because of Aggie and Matt and the people behind it, the community that is in here. So like I definitely understand why some people would buy Bitcoin and then when it goes down, they sell it. I get it, but they probably haven't really researched it and the importance of something like Bitcoin.
And I think and listen, I think what you just said is it's really good feedback because it's really important, but it wasn't important to my dad, but for me, it's like a lifeline. Why is that?
Yeah.
For me, it's like, what do I do without it? Buy gold bars? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I need some sort of I got a family, dude. You know what I mean? Like I can't, like Bitcoiners have been predicting the rough times that were ahead. They've been talking about it forever. I used to tell my dad about the bank. My dad's wealth was sitting in Bank of America. I used to be like, Dad, I don't know about that, man. You know what I mean? He'd be like, like, what do you know, kid? Go play games. Go play Nintendo. You know what I mean?
Because we're hearing information that our father's generation, mother's generation, just are not privy to, right? We like they like my father and mum, they came here for 6 weeks, and every day they would just catch up on the world news, and I never have the news on here. I want just watching it. It's just like I just it's just the stuff that is fed to the majority of the people is and that's why I can understand why my father, when I speak to him about Bitcoin, and my mom, because they were asking me about investing, and I was just telling them about Bitcoin, and I could just see just the
Yes.
glaze
Yes.
in the eyes,
Yes.
and I get it, I understand.
And I think, look, I think there is something to the idea that you stay within, if you're lucky, not lucky, but if you're really paying attention, I think the move to make is you got to ride the wave of your time. Would it have made sense for my dad to be like, I'm not going to invest in the stock market. I'm going to wait around for some revolutionary breakthrough. Maybe it's something like Bitcoin. No, right? Ride the wave of that generation. And listen, if you didn't ride the wave, what were you doing? Right? The wave of that generation was like real estate and the stock market. That doesn't feel right. If you're a millennial and you're thinking to yourself, something isn't right here, right? Your dad's giving you advice, whatever. Buy a nice piece of real estate. Real estate always goes up. Contribute to your 401k. And I'm telling you, I know I've talked to enough millennials. If you're a millennial and you begin to even try to do that, you feel something ain't right.
Mm.
And the best words that I could use to describe it is it feels like a Ponzi that you are at the bottom of, or not even a part of. Imagine if there's a company like Amway, or what's a big network marketing company, Amway or Herbalife. I don't know. Just pick one of the big ones. Imagine if you're doing research and it's like company seems to be close to bankruptcy, unsustainable. You're hearing all these headlines about this Ponzi company, and then your friends like trying to recruit you into it, or your dad's like, come to this meeting and join this company, and you're like, well, what? This company seems like it's got a year left to it. Like, what the hell? This is how it feels to be a millennial in the legacy world, in the analog world. I mean, if you're just an average dude who's just got a job and you're just chugging away and you play, a couple card games every once in a while on Splinterlands, and I've got my deck and I don't care what happens. You know what I mean? I'll get involved every once in a while and I'll yell oh, this change, I hate this change. You know what I mean? Whatever. Fine. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about those dudes. If you think you're here, I'm exiting on the next bull run, I'm going to sell all my cars in the next bull run. Fine. I'm not talking about that. You do. I'm talking about the movement. And this is where, like, you made a comment when you were just talking. You said, if you've done research into Bitcoin, then you realize it's important, right? And it's important not to everybody. It ain't important to my 13-year-old daughter. It ain't important to my dad. It's important to me. Why? Why is that? You know what I mean? And so I think that if you're paying attention, and listen, you could be any age and you can invest in a millennial trend. One thing I've learned about Bitcoin is that if I see a trend that takes hold in my daughter's generation, you know what I mean? I might be open to it because now I understand the dynamic, right? And so, anyways, I think there's something deeper happening here. I think there's a movement. I think there's a movement underneath this thing. And I think ultimately this is where there's a big saying, the wealth transfer, Bitcoin is, a wealth transfer mechanism, transferring from the older generation to the younger generation or whatnot. And a lot of younger guys have experienced that transfer of wealth, right? By owning Bitcoin and whatnot. And I think, that is part of the reason why it's generally going to be transferred to this age bracket, is because for us, it has a deeper meaning.
Mm.
You know, I was recently talking to a guy. I was talking to a guy. He's a business owner here, and I was talking to him the other day because I was in his business, and he bought some crypto on Coinbase, and his younger wife talked him into it, and so he bought some crypto, and he straight up said to me, you know, I tried to have a real conversation with him. I didn't want him to like fluff anything, and he said to me, he was like, you know, I got a couple $1,000s in crypto. He named a few cryptos, Shiba Inu coin, and I forgot what the other ones were. But anyways, he's like, you know, I've got a few crypto, but you know, I'm just looking to make some money. You know, I'm just looking to double my money, triple my money. Okay. There ain't no movement in him, not even a hint of a movement. Like, this is good for the world. I own a little bit of Bitcoin. I own some Shiba I'm going to speculate on, but I own a little bit of Bitcoin because it's good for mankind. Let's transition, whatever. There's none of that. There's no movement in there. There's no passion to it. There's no excitement. There's no, I'd like to use Shiba Inu coin when they come out with their decks and I can make swaps and that, none of that. I'm going to farm with, I'm going to play a DeFi game. Oh, they've got a new game, the Shibarium game or whatever. None of that. None of that. Could care less. It's on Coinbase. I feel safe with it on Coinbase. If it goes up and it's worth more than I bought it for, I'm going to sell it and I'm going to withdraw it to my bank account as dollars. Mm-hmm. This is why I think that crypto and Bitcoin in general is a wealth transfer. Because I think with the volatility and with the road bumps and all the things that you have to go through, you just talked about a little bit of how, you know, sometimes you're shaken in Splinterlands. Sometimes you have to rethink about why you're here, you know, and rebuild that. And what probably happens is if you don't have any of that movement in you, you won't find a deeper reason, and you'll just be like, why do I lose sleep over this damn thing? You know, so what? I'm down. You know, all right, I put in 10 grand and I'm down. I lost 50%. I'm down 5. Fuck, I'll take the hit, the kick to the balls. I could breathe better if I sell the damn thing. I'll move on with my life. And I think the reason why this age group isn't selling, why this age group is holding, you know, and I watched a big investor on a podcast one time. He's an older, you know, one of these big hedge fund, I have $1 billion family office, whatever guys. We've all seen these guys on these podcasts. And he said that one of the things that totally shocked him about Bitcoin was the fact that during a crash, there was so many people that held. Yeah. He was like, why are they holding this? And now he's invested in Bitcoin because I think his name was Paul Tudor Jones. You know, Paul Tudor Jones, big respectable guy in the hedge fund business or whatever. And he's like, we have an allocation now in our portfolio of Bitcoin. And a lot of it was inspired by literally the hodl idea. The fact that he saw hodlers and just was a little bit blown away by it. That is the movement within us. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm prepared to go down with the Splinterland ship, bro. Like, I'll go down with it. You know what I mean? Like, if this is a slow boat to zero, I'm going down with the ship. Now, if it goes up, sure, I'll build a house in real life. I'll do something for my family. You know what I mean? Level up our life. You know what I mean? But at the core, it's a movement for me. I ain't never going to sell it 100%. And if it don't boom, I'm a hodler.
Yeah. I think that's why, yeah, I don't begrudge these whales that kind of are making their money now, because they've just done, you know, just make that initial investment and belief. I wonder, like you just mentioned there as well, that whole movement, it's really, really interesting if you kind of like start to peel it back as well. It's probably like, you know, just that conspiracy in me as well. Just it's probably why there's so much negativity in the press and the news about Bitcoin. It's because if people really start to know the real reason why you want to have Bitcoin, it would just spread and spread and spread, right? That can't happen for the.
I agree with you. Listen, sometimes it can be frustrating, you know, but whatever, you know, sometimes as a millennial, you know, you sit back and you go, why is this older generation not allowing this thing? Like, why didn't we get a Bitcoin ETF? Why didn't we get, why is Gary Gensler and the SEC, why did he do what he did? You know what I mean? And I'm not a conspiracy guy, man. I don't dig in and think, oh, there's a big, although I know that there is some, there's some rich people that can pull strings, just like in Splinterlands, a rich dude decides to sell his SBS or whatever, it affects us. You know what I mean? And, you know, uh, I think in the legacy world, you have that too. But I do agree with what you're saying. I think the general idea here is when you sit back and think about it, you're like, I think the too big to fail thing that's in the United States is the boomers retirement fund. Like if I look at and I'm not a boomer, so I try to understand, right? I'm a strong believer in, seek to understand than to be understood, right? And so that's what I do with the Philippines. I try to understand Filipinos. I'm not a Filipino, but I seek to understand. I'm a student to understanding Filipino, and I have some characteristics that are similar, you know what I mean, to the Filipino experience. But in general, I seek to understand. So same thing I do with the boomer generation. I have boomer parents. I love my mom. You know what I mean? My mom's almost all of my boomer relatives are living off of some form of government, whether a government or stock market or retirement fund, whatever. Right. So I understand this. If the legacy system collapses and crumbles and burns, bro, I don't know what am I going to do? Be the breadwinner for every single adult boomer in my family? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like that ain't that ain't going to work out very well. You know what I mean? So like there is a part that like I don't think that there's this big, like there's this, what do they call, like the Jekyll Island, like there's a group of people going you know what I mean? But I think in general what it is it's a system that they've really invested and bought into. It's a way of life for them. Like I think in general the boomers were in a situation where it was like, hey, listen, if you just go get a good job and you contribute and you do your part, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. Well,
you know
I also understand it, man. It's like if if they kind of relinquish that power, then it's not good for them, not good for their families as well, right? I totally get it. Like it's I was listening to an interview about this Serbian ex-footballer, and he's just like trying to become the president of their like football association, soccer association. But he said it's just impossible because the people at the top are just not ready yet. They're not, it's not possible. Like even he's got like 95% of the people behind him, but those 5% hold the most power. It's even happening in Bulgarian football as well. I think it's just the way of the world. So like I read as well, you're primarily not a player in Splinterlands, right? You are a collector, investor, is that right?
Yeah, I think I would label myself as that. I originally got into, I did an interview with After Sound. I did an interview with Gank, and I went into deeper detail on this stuff. But I mean, I originally got into Splinterlands. I'll give you the short story real quick. So what happened was I had a business in the Philippines, was going really well. COVID hits, my business gets shut down. I'm sitting at home. I decide to start live streaming. I'm already interested in crypto and Bitcoin, so I start streaming crypto and Bitcoin. Now I'm obviously in the Philippines. I like the Filipinos. I wanted to stream for Filipinos. I wanted to build a Filipino community, not for everybody. So I started streaming at 7 p.m. Philippines time was my stream, and I started streaming. I joined some Facebook groups that were like, and they were very scammy. The Filipinos crypto environment was very scammy, very Ponzonomics, very scammy, the worst of the worst. So I was like, I got to start my own group. So I started my own Facebook group called Crypto Philippines Learning, and I began to stream. And Filipinos started coming in to watch my stream, and I targeted towards the Filipino audience. And it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And then I had 1,000 followers and then 2,000 followers, and it was growing. And it was very interesting at that time because that was during the COVID lockdowns. And in the Philippines, what had happened was the Philippines kind of called back all of the Filipinos from abroad. And some of them had been working on ships, cruise ships, container ships. And some of them were just forced to come back to the Philippines because the ship wasn't operating, or right, the cruise ships got locked down. And so you had all of these abroad workers who were now like locked down in the Philippines. They even did something at a certain time where they were like, none of the nurses were allowed to go back abroad because they needed them back home, because there was like a surge in the hospitals and they needed nurses, and nurses were getting COVID and they were short and people were dying, and it was panic. And so they were like, no, none of medical workers were allowed to go abroad. You got to come to work. And then the medical workers were like, we don't want to work because the salary was like peanuts. And so there was a standoff. So what happened was my stream started to get a lot of these like workers, like people that would normally be working a job. I had hostesses from cruise ships and, just all kinds of Filipinos, very good English. They're all on my stream. And I started to get the sense of responsibility as a live streamer. I'm like, damn, we can't be doing DGen shit. You know what I mean? Because originally I started on Tron, and it's funny because I experienced the Steam to Hive hard fork from Tron. So I was actually on the Justin Sun side. So I experienced it from Justin Sun buying Steam and trying to take it over, right? I didn't experience it from the Steam side. So that's an interesting little thing. So I was aware of Splinterlands and everything like that. But we were doing DGen stuff, like crazy stuff, Russian rug pulls and, but luckily I was able to kind of like, my timing was really good and we were making money. So I would be like, we'd jump into a project. I'd talk to the developer. I'd be like, I got a bunch of followers. What can you do for us? And they'd throw us something for my community. I'd give away. We're going in here. Guys, everybody get out. Sell. Go over here. All right, go. And what happened was I got a little bit anxiety. I got stressed. It started not to be fun anymore because now it was like, I'm responsible. I'm giving financial advice. They say, don't, this is not financial advice. I was like, buy this, sell that. So I was just having fun. So what happened was, man, I came to this epiphany moment. I was just like, you know what? I was just talking to my wife and I was just like, I can't do this DGen anymore, man. I was proud. I was like, Chad, Chad, the meme Chad, big balls, big ball Chad. And I was just like, I can't be Chad anymore. I was like, Chad is too stressful, man. So what happened was I had this moment. I was like, I'm going to take the community into a project that has battle tested and that I think will be here long term. That's my idea. And I started looking. And I was like, Splinterlands. Like, that's where I'm going. I know about them. I remember the original interviews. As a matter of fact, I tried to play Splinterlands during the hard fork, but I couldn't figure out which wallet to download because it was Steam or Hive, and it was called Steam Monsters, and I just got confused and I gave up and I moved on to something else. So anyways, long story short is I drove the entire community into Splinterlands. I messaged Agrod at that time. Agrod messaged me back. I said, bro, I'm a live streamer. I actually got on a call with him. And I was talking to him, I say, hi, I'm Leveluplife. I'm a streamer. I've got a community, Filipinos. What can you do for us? I'll bring my community over here. And he was very skeptical. He was like, I've done stuff for streamers in the past and it doesn't really work out. And I'm like, well, I'm different. You know what I mean? He was like, here's some promo codes, and so he threw me a bunch of promo codes for my community. And so I went on live stream. I gave all my community promo codes. We started 3 guilds at that time. Because I was prepared to build guilds for as many community members, and we filled up 3 guilds, 15 each. It was like 35 people that really were interested. And then, a lot of people played and then quit in the beginning. And then a lot of those worker people, they went back to their jobs. Like the hostess went back to work on the cruise ship and stuff. And we had some, there's still a girl, like a young girl that was playing Splinterlands for like 6 months, and then she got her job back and she went back to work and she never sold anything. And she's got like an Amio Cambio that she looted in her rewards pool. You know, she's still got. She messaged me every 6 months, like, can you log into my account? And I put them up for rent. Yeah, I claim her SPS for her. You know what I mean? But anyways,
Wow.
that's my story. And then just to take it one step farther, what happened was I had this idea that Splinterlands could create jobs because I know about what I was paying my employees. And I was like, this is close to being a job. Maybe land will do it. Because remember land, I bought land and I was like, maybe land, we create a business out of land. I could hire employees in the metaverse. I don't know what it's going to look like, but maybe they'll work my land or help me make money or whatever, right? And so I had that vision. And so I would buy cards for my community, like the ones that couldn't afford cards or something like that. I would buy them and then I would delegate them to them. This was before the rental system and everything like that. You know what I mean? And I delegate like a Yoden Zaku or something like that. And back then you could spam, I don't know if you I don't know what you call it, but spamming, you could buy a Yoden Zaku and have nothing else. And you could just like spam and just slaughter everybody. You know what I mean? And so I'd buy a Yoden Zaku and I just delegate it to a Filipino, a Lyra deep swimmer, a Yoden Zaku, what do you call it?
Llama.
Llama, and just delegate it and boom, they would just become beast mode. And then the Axie Infinity boom, and the Axie Infinity boom was what I had envisioned in my brain. And it was confirmed. It's like, oh my God, they're doing exactly what I had visioned. This is exactly what I thought about doing, So I went over to join the, YGG and with the Axie Infinity boom, when the big Axie Infinity thing happened, I went over to join YGG and just kind of merged my small Filipino community with their Filipino community and just let's go. I was just ready to help out. This is what I envisioned. I thought this was going to happen. This was my idea. Let's go. How can I help? How can I support this movement? And this kind of goes back to my being too early sort of thing. You know what I mean? I think it was for me, it was proof of concept. For me, it was confirmation, because before the Axie boom, I don't know when you came in Splinterlands. When did you kind of arrive?
In the boom.
Okay, so maybe I don't know if you remember, but before the boom was a really weird. Before the boom, you used to just burn cards. Like common cards. There was common cards that were just like, there'd be like thousands or hundreds of just 1 penny listings that just didn't get bought. We actually never got that far in this cycle yet. Maybe we will go there, but not yet. But back then, you wouldn't put your card up for a penny because there was already 1,000 up there for a penny that weren't selling. So you just burned. Neil McSpadden had a service. It was called Deck 101. And his service was he would give you an account number, like your account number 1005, and you would delegate cards to that account, and he would guarantee that a manual person would play the account. That was his guarantee. Mm-hmm. He promised that someone manually would play the account. But everything that account looted, they would burn. That was the concept. And they would send you DEC.
Wow.
And that made sense. It made sense to burn everything.
I wonder.
So you didn't even think about the cards. You just burned it. You just wanted the 5 DEC, the 6 DEC, the 3 DEC, the 10 DEC.
Yeah, but it sounds like just trying to put the value on the card is like, from what I know now, it's such a crazy concept. Even the other week, I just kind of surveyed my land and I had a common, a few commons, and I was like, and I kind of bought an epic and a rare, and it's like I had 2 commons, and there's like I just put them on the market. I actually sold one. I kind of regret it now, and I had the other one, and I was like, I just took it off. I just thought 50, I think it was like 50 or 60 something, whatever dollars for land. And then because the thing that made me realize what I was doing, it's just like, I just immediately did it. And it's because the reason why I was doing it is to help fund me to buy legendary cards. You know, the lowest legendary card is the Jim Bilchka for Earth. And it was pretty like to level, like to buy like you know, the cards I needed to put on the land would have been the same price as that land. And it just didn't weigh up. Something felt really unbalanced. So
Yeah.
I
spotted that dynamic. I realized very quickly that and this is where the arbitrage thing comes in, because it's very interesting, because I don't know if you watched, I made a video about my land strategy. I uploaded a video.
Yeah.
And that, I think that was one of the premises that I talked about, was it didn't really make sense. You know, the card prices compared to land prices don't seem to make sense, you know? But the other thing too is, if I'm right about the underlying movement behind this thing, nothing really matters in the short term. The only thing that really matters is that aggroed, and it's funny because aggroed, you know, sometimes the Maverick group pokes aggroed, they poke at them. You know what I mean? They say, you know, F you aggroed in different ways, right? And what happens to aggroed, if you notice, is every once in a while have like, it's almost like an emotional response, right? So he'll respond logically. Guys, this promo card is priced right because. But if he gets poked a lot, he'll create an emotional response. And that emotional response is where I think there's hidden gems. And you know, he said something in the Mav groups. He said something in the Mav groups the other day. I think it was yesterday or something like that. He said, you know, something along the lines of, you know, you guys, you can do what you want. We're going to be here regardless, building, creating great things for this community. You know, you could sell if you want to, you could buy if you want to, you could do what you want. But if you sell, you won't make it to Valhalla or something like that. You know what I mean? Valhalla or whatever, you know what I mean? And listen, I think, you know, and maybe if there's one takeaway from this long conversation, I would ask people to do is just pay a little bit closer attention to the underlying, you know, the movement aspect of it. Because if I'm right, here's what I think is on the table. I think what's on the table is the basic principle of the trend is your friend until the end. If this is a trend, a millennial trend, I don't know. You know, maybe there's a new trend, maybe the fourth turning 80 years from now, right? Whatever. But if this is a trend, it's going to last our lifetime. You know what I mean? There's a possibility that land in Splinterlands could potentially be handed down to my daughter as I'm on my deathbed. And if that's the case, don't get caught up too much in the short-term noise, because it really doesn't matter, does it? You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter. I mean, listen, I do believe in constructive criticism. I do believe, you know, hey, listen, I think that ultimately all of the complaining and the noise and stuff ultimately does affect the direction that Splinterlands goes. You know, like if ultimately we end up with, you know, some sort of a different freight with no bots and this and that, I mean, the community created that. But I wouldn't get so caught up in that I lose sight of the bigger picture.
No.
You know what I mean? Because the next bull run, right? Wouldn't it be a shame to get so caught up in the next bull run? When is it going to happen? When can I take some profit? Blah, 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 blah. And this is actually a 40-year trend that you get blindsided by some short-term 1 or 2 year thing that's going to happen. I mean, how often has anybody thought about the edition that's coming out in 10 years from now? I mean, in 10 years, I'm 50. I still ain't old at 50, dude. You know, like at 50, you could begin to travel the world at 50. You know what I mean? So like in 10 years, how many editions are we going to be in? 10 editions? How many Bitcoin cycles? How many halvings? How many, you know what I'm saying? So like, I think that's the message. And then I think what I would do is pay attention to those signals and those hints that point to something bigger. Is there something bigger here? I don't know. Are we just all playing some random freaking game that just happened to spin out? Some random freaking idea that some guy had in his bedroom one day that's now turned into Splinterlands? Or is there something bigger here driving this thing? And I just think that it's not a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence I went from Bitcoin to Splinterlands. You know what I mean? I don't think that my whole crypto journey has now led me here talking to you about Splinterlands, the People's Guild. You know what I mean? I don't think that that's just some weird coincidence, a random freaking act.
Yeah.
You know, I believe I'm here on purpose. So how did I get here? Why am I here? What's happening? What's coming next?
Yeah.
You know, I kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think it just boils down to that. I think there are some people just here playing the game and not seeing the picture. I think that's probably why you see, you know, just I'm just going back to that the new promo cards. Like people are just losing their shit about that. It's just kind of like you were talking about long-term vision. Like if you just imagine Splinterlands as that oil tanker, it's going right across the Atlantic. That card is just like a little wave, just hits it as it just come out of port. It's kind of if I think maybe people really don't know like why Splinterlands is here. Like if people listen to like the interview we had with Matt, like Matt goes deep into it. Aggie went deep into, you know, that peace, prosperity, and freedom. Like they looked at all the shit that was happening in the world, and that's the reason why me and you are here. There's no other reason. Like, you know, like you go back to that turning with the stock market crash in 2008. That's the instigator from Matt. That's how they ended up. Those two ended up getting together and chatting in a bar somewhere. It's just kind of. I know it wasn't just a random meet or anything like that, but you know they got introduced. But it's just the like long term, man. But unfortunately, you know, and you know, people are allowed to say what they want, right? They can raise hell, you know, if they wish, because you know. But in some ways, maybe it's they do care about the game. Maybe they feel a bit left out, or I don't know. I'm not too sure the reasons. There's probably many reasons why people are losing their shit about that. The recent promo card, for example. It's not just that though, is it? It's kind of like, you know, like I was saying to Ben the other day. It's just like this game, the mood swings. It's just like waves up and down, right? It's just like the other week, it's just like Happy Land. You know, Land got released, people just buzzing, and then it just takes a little drop of a promo card, and then the fires.
How much staked SPS am I going to need? And right.
Yeah, short term. But so what's your we're talking about long term. I know this. I just looked at the clock, man. We've been going for nearly 2.5 hours, and I'm sorry. I did want to kind of like talk to you more about TeamPH. What's your like long term vision for TeamPH? I know it's you and Mango Mayhem, but
yeah, yeah, it is a group, right? It is an organization. We do have different people in there, but I mean, obviously I have my opinion and my vision. And then that kind of gets meshed together with other people's vision. And then if we can all get on the same page, you know, that ultimately something's going to come out of that, right? The way that I see it is, I'm a coin a phrase, you know, win the Philippines, win Web3, right? And when we saw the Axie boom, there was an interesting stats that came out of that is 70% of all scholars were Filipinos, right? Think about that. 70% of all scholars were Filipinos. That means 30% was the rest of the world, right? Filipinos are going to play a very, very important role. And we can unpack that, but since we've been going for an hour and a half, I'll just hit the bullet points.
2 hours and a half.
Yeah, 2 hours and a half. Look, I think there's something very, very important in that. And I think that my long-term vision is to ensure that Mango says, a voice for the voices unheard, there is an aspect to the Filipino community where, you don't see them. You don't really see you don't really see them interacting that much, in the general Discord. And you're probably, there's so much stuff that isn't known by this community. For example, did you know that there's a PH Mavericks group?
No.
There's a whole separate group that they call themselves Filipino Mavericks. It's Mavericks for the Filipinos. You know what I mean? The hardcore Filipino Filipino Splinterlands players have their own Mavericks group. I watched a transaction happen. I was witness to a transaction that happened the other day where a Filipino was selling a $10,000 account to another Filipino. It just happened on a private Filipino server with a Filipino group, and not one foreigner's in that group. Agro made a statement a while back. He said, we're thinking about potentially Splinterfest in Philippines. And did you know that the number one transaction is happening in the Philippines? Number one transaction volume or whatever.
Wow.
Right? And some people may have thought, okay, whatever. They trade probably, they didn't give it too much thought, but I'm telling you, there is no other group. I don't think there's a Vietnamese private Splinterlands group. There isn't a Cambodian. There isn't a Taiwan. There isn't a Canadian Splinterlands group. They're all in the main Discord. No other nationality like the Philippines. Go type in Splinterlands Philippines in Facebook and see how many groups there are. Buy and sell, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them with thousands of people in them. Splinterlands PH, 33,000 members. They're not interacting in the main Discord. I could go on forever, but the idea is that the Philippines are very, very important. And I'm telling you, they don't feel included. And if you look at the general sentiment, the general narratives that get tagged to the Filipino community, they're not positive in general. It's me and Mango over here going, some of the best players in Splinterlands. They're really hurt by certain, there's certain statements that are made sometimes, like the best player, Splinterfest in Las Vegas, blah 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 blah. If the Filipinos, where's the Filipinos? Well, bro, they fly into Las Vegas, bro. First of all, you need a visa to get into the United States. It takes 3 months. My kids and my wife are not American citizens. Do you know how hard it is for me to get on an airplane with my family to go visit my family in the United States? Hard as shit. You are not going to Vegas for a freaking Splinterlands tournament, even if you have the money. Right? These are sort of things that need to be, these sort of narratives. This is the narratives me and Mango are just yelling from the rooftop. Be careful of these narratives. Because there's one thing about a Filipino community, man. When a Filipino community feels like they've been not appreciated, when they're called names like value extractors and whatnot, what they then end up doing is they don't quit the game. They value extract. That's what happens. And so if we want the Filipino community to be a part of Splinterlands, which I think it's one of the most important groups of people that need to be brought into Splinterlands in a big way and felt included, felt appreciated, correct, and make sure the narratives are correct. I'm not talking about some random mouthy dude in Mavericks group. I'm talking about very important people, influencers, YouTuber guys like you who are giving a voice to these guys. You know what I mean? Like Damian Wolf and these guys. Damian Wolf, the first Splinterlands live streamer in the Philippines. Does anybody know his name outside of the Filipinos? You know what I mean? So these are important, and they don't come in, man. They're not loud. You know that they're not loud. They don't come in. They don't come in Mavericks group. You know who I am. I'm important. You know what I mean? That's not like them. And so in general, they need a, I think it's important that they have a seat at the table. And what TeamPH is out to do, and one of the ways that we are going to ensure that Filipinos get a seat at the table is ensuring that Filipinos control a certain amount of assets that are respectable. Because a lot of people respect people based on the assets they hold. Oh, you're a region holder, right? Your opinion matters. What do you have to say about land, right? Because you're a region holder, right? So your opinion must be important. So one of the ways that we're going to ensure that Filipinos have a seat at the table is ensuring that as a community, we own assets. So as a community, we have land. As a community, we have decks. We have champion level decks now. They're owned as a community, not me delegating it to a Filipino, not Mango, owned by TeamPH, played by a Filipino. These are some of the important.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you have like a plan as well to give people the opportunity, like if they can't afford land at the current prices, you're giving people opportunity to kind of pay it off on an agreed sum each month, right? Is that
we call them initiatives. We call them initiatives, and different people in our community start initiatives that support the community, and then those initiatives just inspire and empower, right? And we gear them towards the Filipino community. Look, I won't say any names, but there's a lot of organizations that are in this game, different type of groups and organizations and whatnot, that they're supportive type organizations. They support Splinterlands, but nobody's really supporting Filipinos. Nobody's really directly targeting the Filipino group, even though they represent this huge number. Right? Like if you're the owner of Axie Infinity and you know that 70% of the scholars are Filipinos, would you not make a little bit of a targeted approach? You know what I mean? Okay, maybe you don't learn about targeting what's a Vietnamese culture need. You know what I mean? But maybe you target that group that represents this huge portion of your community. And I think that's important. I think that needs to happen. Like Splinterfest Philippines needs to be something that's on the table. If not this year, not next year, it needs to be on the table. Yeah. Right? Like it's important. It's that important. You got to host it here. When? Or give us an idea or just promise it. You know what I mean? And then do good on your promises or whatever. These things need to happen. Anyways, these initiatives that we have, like land mortgages, rent to own decks, we have Mango's got initiative curation. So we've broken into the Hive ecosystem. We have Filipinos that are now writing introductory articles about themselves. We have guys taking pictures, like he's a seaman, he works on a ship, he's saying goodbye to his family, he's playing Splinterlands on his cell phone while he's working on a container ship in the engine room or whatever, and he's writing this. One of the things the Filipinos can do is tell their story. You know what I mean? And we're empowering Filipinos to write their story, write their articles. People are interested.
Yeah.
Some of the Filipinos are shy, like they're not interesting. Like my story isn't interesting. I'm like, no, take a picture of your neighborhood. Take a picture of your house. They're interested. You know what I mean? The roof is caving in. That's very interesting to a foreigner. That may seem like a sucky, crappy situation. You may be a little bit embarrassed by it, but I'm telling you, it's very interesting how you live. You know what I mean? You take a shower with a tabo. You know what I mean? Like that's explain how to take a shower with a tabo. Let foreigners read that. You know what I mean? How do you take a shower without water pressure and running water? Which 50% of Filipinos are experiencing that. You know what I mean? So anyways.
Well, I think people doing that, definitely, I agree with you. Really interesting. Like even like reading about, your blogs, about the coconut tree, the tree of life sort of thing, and how you've used the wood from the coconut trees to build the goat house, and that's just it's really interesting. So I think I definitely agree. And also once they do it, number one, I think the hardest part is probably writing it. The second thing is the fulfillment of actually seeing people vote for you and seeing that, that hive come in, and just to encourage them to keep doing it and other people in the community to do it as well, right?
Yeah. And I think that there's a play on the table with, it's interesting because I see these similarities with the analog world and the digital world where, I was actually recently had this idea where I was just experiencing some of the Filipinos and the way that they're treating their Splinterlands account, and it really mimics a bank account. There's a lot of Filipinos that are treating their Splinterlands account like me with my Western mentality brain, born in the United States, and I'm interpreting this and I'm taking it in and I'm analyzing it and I'm going, this is like how I treated a bank account back in the US. I'm like, okay, Splinterlands is clearly not a bank. It's not a bank account, but it's mimicking one. And this is the same epiphany I'm having with all the things in Splinterlands. I'm just like, bro, you talk about peace, prosperity, and freedom, and we're buying virtual land on Pretoria, right? Like, how is that? What does that have to do with peace, prosperity, and so like these, you know what I mean? Like, wait a minute. Now a Filipino's using a Splinterlands account like a bank account? Well, that's prosperity. But we're calling it a game account. We're calling it NFTs. We're calling it this. But the cards are mimicking a coconut tree, right? You buy a card, you put it up for rent, generates a yield. That's an asset. That's a passive income producing asset. So I'm seeing these parallels and I'm like, there's something deeper going on here. This don't make sense. You say peace, prosperity, and freedom, and then you're looking at a Filipino and you're like, he's prospering. How is he prospering? He's got a bank account. He doesn't have a bank account in real life. He's got a Splinterlands account. It's very, very, I'm saying, if you look very closely, an average Filipino isn't going to own land in the Philippines. And actually, there's a huge barrier of entry in the Philippines. There isn't first-time home buyer, let's qualify you. There ain't none of that crap here. It's like you got the money or you don't. This is the sale price. Ain't no loans, bro. You buy a rice farm, you buy a coconut farm. You ain't getting a bank loan. You're paying cash. So
is it easy to get that across to the people that you speak to, and like at that this is the opportunity? Are you laughing,
bro? Sometimes I feel like I'm alone. Sometimes, you know what? I was nervous to do the podcast with you, man. Because I go back to the analogy of digging a hole knowing a fire is coming. You know what I mean? And everybody's just like, bro, you're out there, dude. You know what I mean? Like you got people that are literally just focused on like, I think I'm going to quit this game because they want me to stake SPS to do my battles. And I'm over here like save the world. And I'm just like, nah, man, I got to keep this to myself. You know what I'm saying? Like that, like you know what I'm saying, bro? Like I came on here, I'm comfortable with you. We're ranting, you recorded it. Maybe it hits the internet, whatever. I'm sure some people will listen to it. Will probably get the random comment saying, bro, this was a great fucking rant I listened to before bed. Like I know it, but a lot of times I don't talk. Or I'm saying it to a Filipino because like I really believe maybe it's information this guy needs to hear or whatever. You know what I mean? Like maybe I just need a bigger, hey, bro, your platform, you know what I mean? Maybe that's a platform. You know what I mean? Maybe I know, bro, like I know these feelings are out there. Like I know people can relate with what I'm saying, right? But then when you go into Mav's group, it's just noise. So I just kind of stay back, man. I'm doing my own thing over here. I'm building what I believe, that fulfills my soul and shit. And I'm over here doing what I got to do. And I don't, right now I'm in Splinterlands doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That does seem a little bit crazy on the surface, because on the surface, it's just like staked SPS and it's land. What's land price? And, oh man, do I have monsters to work my land? And I think you can get caught up in that surface level shit. You know what I mean? And
no,
I think
man, sorry, go.
You know what I'm saying? No, go ahead, man. I'm kind of going on a rant now. I think.
No, man, it's great. No, well, you definitely don't sound nervous when you're kind of speaking. So, man, it's been great, man, chatting with you. Like this, I think like as I said before at the start of the podcast, as soon as I heard about what you guys were doing and just that concept of the kilo of rice, that just like, whoa, just lit a fire, man. So what you are doing and what you're starting your own movement in the Philippines, man. That's beautiful. There's not many people who can say that.
I feel good about what I'm doing, man. This is what I do. This is kind of what I do now. I guess I'm a Splinterlands full timer, you know. That's what I do. I mean, I meet up with Mango, we talk about Splinterlands, and spend time with my family and do Splinterlands, But for me, it's something deeper. And listen, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll pivot. If I'm wrong, I'll wrong. I'll take the kick to the nuts and I'll move on with my life. You know what I mean? But while I'm here, I'm going to be passionate about it. Why not be passionate about it? And I do actually believe that there's something deeper here, and I've given a few reasons why.
Yeah. No, man. It's great.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, man, I think I could keep on going.
Yeah.
But, I do have work in.
Yeah, do your go. Yeah, and let's reschedule an official one, man, and we'll try to. I know you had a lot of questions, and I think I ranted a little bit. Maybe in a real one, we can bring it. Maybe we can target. Like we got this one out of the way, the ranty one, and then we can get maybe a little bit more targeted.
No, man, I think it wasn't that ranty. I think it's just you like honestly, like just to find out, like you saying about getting people in the Philippines to write about, how they shower, but we found out about you, why you chose Philippines and what you're doing in the Philippines. I think that's just everyone has a story to be told, right, man? And you've told your story, and like your theories on about this being a movement. I tend to agree, man. I think there's lots of people who do believe in this game and why they're in it. And
I'll tell you something, man, like last thoughts here, like something that has played out over my life over and over again is and I'm not trying to pat myself on the shoulder, but I've usually been very early to stuff, and that's not necessarily a good thing, but I have a tendency to be very, very, a little bit too early to things. And then later on they become obvious and I get confirmation. I try to be humble to that, but it's something that's happened to me a lot. And I don't know if it's going to play out again, but I'm here and I does feel like I'm a little bit early. You're early, when you feel like, you know what I mean? What you're saying is sort of, not everybody's thinking it. It's not, I use the word, it's not obvious to everyone, right? Because when it's obvious to everyone, then it's obvious to everyone. And I think that, I think we're in the right place at the right time, man. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I'm in the Philippines. I'm in Web3. Filipinos seem to be playing a huge role in it, right? It's, and I'm very purpose driven. So how the hell, the coincidences that needed to fall into place? I don't think so, man.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I think I was just super early. I was super early.
No, I've heard that many times. We had a chat with Walking Keys as well, and he said exactly the same thing. We're really early. So
Walking Keys, there's something about him I definitely connect with, man. Yeah, Walking Keys is on a wavelength, man. I would actually put him in that category of he's getting glimpses of the real world and not the Matrix. You know what I mean? Like, wait, what? You know what I mean?
Yeah, to be honest, when Walking Keys speaks, I listen, man. Like he's on it. He's kind of, in terms of picking out opportunities. Oh man. I listen to everything.
I think what it is I think it's the guys that are they're somehow, not all the time, but they're able to separate themselves from the game and sort of look at like almost like taking a drone up in the sky, and getting a drone picture of the situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's, but man, you got to run to work, dude.
I do. Yeah. I don't know. It's always like with these podcasts, man, to be honest, before these podcasts, I'm always really nervous as well. And You know, I have got my questions here next to me, and kind of, but it's just, yeah, I just can't, I just have that, you know, just the apprehension before, but after them, man, just like even during it, man, said it to Ben as well, just really buzzing during it, and then afterwards as well, like riding to work, it's like, okay, everyone, I just want to thank you all for listening. You have been listening to the People's Guild. Get well soon, Benny boy.